joined us today for this international conference.
This 5-day academic endeavor, organized by Arya University in association with the University of Manchester, Hokkaido University, Manbhum Ananda Ashram Nityananda Trust, and MerseyRiver Trust, brings together young researchers from across India, England, and Japan, seeking to explore innovative knowledge systems that strengthen local resilience. We envision and seek to manifest a platform that will allow them all to explore emerging ideas.
We hope you had a productive first day of academic engagement.
Before inviting the speakers to the dais, allow us to briefly introduce our distinguished resource person. Dr. Upashok Dash is a senior lecturer in development economics at the Global Development Institute, University of Manchester. He was previously a presidential fellow academic in economics of poverty reduction and is a research affiliate at the Center for Social Norms and Behavioral Dynamics. His work focuses on development economics, applied econometrics, and impact evaluation with research interests spanning social protection programs, education, health, social norms, and empirical political economy. He has worked extensively on measuring social networks and the social drivers of behavior related to sanitation and open defecation in rural and urban Bihar and Tamil Nadu as part of his postdoctoral fellowship with the Penn Social Norms Group at the University of Pennsylvania. Before joining Manchester, he was an assistant professor at the Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, where he taught courses in impact evaluation, development economics, and mathematical economics. Dr. Das earned his PhD in economics from the Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, Mumbai. This session focuses on the ISPF project titled Exploring Policy Mobility for Local Solutions and Community Resilience to Natural Flood Management, a comparative study of the Mersey River Basin, England, and the Shilibati River Basin, India. It is with great honor and respect that we invite Dr. Upashok Dash to kindly grace the dais. Sir.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. Welcome to this session. So, yesterday I think there was a small tussle between which is the most challenging session. So I think Professor Rudra was saying that okay, the session after lunch is most challenging, and then Ekalavya said that no, the last session is most challenging. I challenged them and said that okay, the first session in a winter's morning in Kolkata is the most challenging one, and I stand with my word. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll give a brief overview of what the project is all about, and my colleague Mehboob. So my colleague Mehboob would give the more theoretical underpinnings of what we have been doing, and I'll give a brief overview of the project. So this project, as you can see, this project, as you can see, you have been seeing this title of the project in the leaflets that you have been getting. So this is on exploring policy mobility for local solutions and community resilience through natural flood management, and we are doing a comparative study of the Mersey River Basin in England and Shilibati River Basin in India. Now this is the team that you have been hearing these names for some time now. So I am there, and then my colleague from the University of Manchester, Mehboob, is there, who will be presenting about the theoretical underpinnings, as I said. In our team we have colleagues from Alia University, Nasreen and Ajnarul, and you have been, apart from their academic brilliance, you have also seen their brilliance as a host in this workshop. So thank you, Nasreen and Ajnarul. And we have Ram from Hokkaido University, from the Faculty of Environmental and Earth Science. And then we have a bunch of non-academic partners who are very important in getting all the dynamics, making us understand all the field dynamics. So we, from the UK side, we have MerseyRiver Trust, and from the Indian side, we have Manbun Ananda Ashram Nityananda Trust, MANT. And then, of course, like the most important part is having partners who are related with policy. So we have Professor Kollan Rudra, who very graciously joined us in UK as well, and then attended the UK workshop and also went to the field with us and gave us important knowledge about different aspects of river and flood. And we have Jenia Mukherjee from IIT Kharagpur, who would be a resource person, the main resource person in the workshop that we'll be doing in a couple of days in IIT Kharagpur. And importantly, we have SK Ajimali, who is the research associate in our project, and I can vouch that without his support, this project would not have been, first of all, formulated and even executed. So thank you, Ajim, for the work that we have been doing. Now, this is the brief overview of what we have been doing and what we plan to do in the 12 months of the project. So technically it's 13 months because for some reason or the other we were given 1 month of additional time, but for all purposes it's like a 12-month project. So we started with an introduction and virtual get together with the group, with our team members and the ECRs back in July and August in 2025, and then we discussed about the project scoping and methodology design. And then we, especially for the ECRs, we organized a couple of expert lecture series and training sessions given by Professor Joe Raves and even Priyam Patel from the Presidency University and others. And then the main activity came through in October 2025, where we organized a couple of field visits in the MerseyRiver Basin in UK, upstream and downstream. And then followed by this field visit, we had a one-day workshop in UK where we invited 10 ECRs from different parts of UK, University of Manchester, University of Nottingham, University of Birmingham, UCL. So pan UK, we invited ECRs. So and then after that workshop, we are here now. We have a couple of 2-day workshop in Alia and then a 2-day field visit in the Shilabati River Basin, and then followed by a workshop in IIT Kharagpur, where we'll give chances to the ECRs to present their work as well and discuss further based on what they say. And then finally, what we will do is we'll organize a workshop which will be organized by Ram, our academic partner from Japan. We'll be organizing a workshop in Japan where we'll discuss the final bits of the project. So the methodology is like we have desk-based reviews, field visits, hands-on demonstrations, and online exchange, critical reflection, collaborative learning, and the main thing is like building capacities for exclusive and sustainable flood management. And the idea is to bring a dialogue together, a north and south dialogue together. And that's why we picked UK and India to set up this dialogue. So this is the brief timeline, and we are now close to that, we have crossed that red line. And so left side of the red line is what we have completed, and near the red line is where we are. And after the red line is the workshop that we'll be organizing in Japan. Key milestones. So we had extensive ECR engagements, about 20 ECRs were there from India as well as from UK, and then we had ECR training sessions. We had extensive training sessions, and then we had one important component of the project is we were able to engage. We think we'll be able to engage the local community and learn about their techniques and their ways to mitigate flood disasters. We would be ensuring that we have this local knowledge which can inform policy. And then we had UK in-person workshop, as I said, and then we also completed the UK fieldwork. So this has been the key things that we covered. So basically, like, yeah, this is all we already discussed. So 18 ECR, 7 senior academics, 4 NGO practitioners, and yeah. So we have also one government representative in the project, and then some bits of the work that we did in UK was published in Kuber column in two articles of theirs. And for media coverage, we have to keep partners. Proshun Chaudhary from the Telegraph, and then Unup Haldar, who is here. He's an activist and environmentalist, and has a YouTube channel as well. And we think that we should be able to get all these activities together in a YouTube channel probably here. So one of the key things about the project is we ensure gender equality action. So we have a gender balance team. Of course, in academics, in Indian academia particularly, it's not gender balance across any disciplines that you think of. But still, we try to have a gender balance in our ECR representation. We encouraged applications from women and underrepresented groups. We ensure childcare and hygiene support, and try to ensure 40% of female participation, and also ensure that, okay, our ECRs were able to travel safe and gave provisions if there were some particular requirements. And we also have a gender advisory group, and Dr. Nasreen Banu is heading that group. And for EDI, which is one of the key component of any project that is funded by UK is like equality, diversity, and inclusion. And we had provisions which ensured that we did all the things to ensure that we are EDI we are structured in the way EDI wants. So this has been our policy engagements. Our project has been planning to achieve direct policy influences, river restoration river restoration planning in Bengal Delta, and as I said, the key thing that of our project is like community-based flood mitigation, where we try to understand the interventions taken by local communities in flood mitigation, and whether that can be integrated to the larger policy in India. And of course, we have Kollan Rudra, who is a key policy person. So we particularly have him so that there can be a policy. We can ensure that there is a policy dialogue. And we have invited representatives from the Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India, to our event in Kolkata, also to ensure that we have these policy discussions. And I'm going to, and this is what we expect. We expect documentation of links, documentation of India's knowledge system, policy papers, some field work and participatory research outputs. And then these are some of the pictures of our UK field visit in MerseyRiver Basin. And yeah, this is a wetland which I think in yesterday's discussion, Professor Kaushik Kundu also told us about Ire and Pine. This is a similar version in UK. And this is the workshop that we conducted in the University of Manchester. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? So now Mehboob would be for the theoretical underpinnings about the project.
Thank you so much. We'll be having questions, if any, so we'll be taking the questions at the end of the session. Mehboob, please come up and have your deliberation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Das, for this informative and insightful discussion. Illuminating thoughts and ideas have added immense value to our conference proceedings.
Now we have the honor of inviting Dr. Mehboob Sahana, our next speaker of the ISBF session. Dr. Mehboob Sahana joined the University of Manchester as a research associate in 2020. In 2022, he was awarded an early career fellowship by the Leverhulme Trust and currently serves as the principal investigator of a 3-year research project titled Landscape, Environment and the People, Ecological Spoils of the Bengal Divide. His Leverhulme-funded project examines the interlinked issues of political partition, ecological degradation, and the environmental sustainability crisis in the Bengal Delta. The research aims to develop implementable analytical frameworks for understanding the social-environmental interface in the region and to formulate problem-solving guidelines for achieving transboundary sustainable development goals. Dr. Sahana is a cultural and environmental geographer whose work focuses on land use change with particular attention to politics and governance of human and material environments. His current research interests include transboundary river basin management, landscape ecology, social ecological resilience, multi-hazard risk assessment, land use change, rural-urban conversion, and the socio-political implications of land use dynamics in the global south. His research has extensively explored transformations in human-environment interactions in the global south from the colonial period through post-partition and post-independence eras. This work critically with narratives of land, water, and forest resource use, the impacts of change and the associated challenges of sustainable development, policymaking, and environmental governance. The title of his lecture today is Neoliberalism, Nature-Based Solutions and Indigenous Knowledge Systems, Rethinking Environmentalism and Climate Justice in Contemporary India. It is with great honor and respect that we invite Dr. Mehboob Sahana to kindly grace the dais.
Thank you so much for this brief introduction. So it's time to explore like why we have chosen two very important and current debate in the world going on in environmentalism, sustainability and climate change. That is nature-based solutions. We have those who are closely working in this particular area of research. The term has been used first time by IPCC in 2006, and then it was discussed a lot in the non-academic practitioners for 10 years, and then after 2015, it was largely become a debate in academic, global not mostly, academic environment, and then slowly after pandemic, it's become a global debate nowadays. Like, do we need to adopt nature-based solutions more than the traditional solutions? What is happening for last 2-3 decades? And then if we closely look the COP 28, 29, and COP 30, there's another ongoing debate on indigenous knowledge systems. Mostly come from the Brazil and African continent, and then now people are exploring like, okay, what the indigenous knowledge systems about other global south and also in global north. So now, of course, all this fancy term used by global north is an hegemony, and there are somewhere we need to decolonize these ideas. We need to rethink in global south context. So that's why I have used another word, neoliberalism. Like in contemporary India, how we have used these three terms, neoliberalism, nature-based solutions, and indigenous knowledge systems, and why we have to integrate these three. Recently, we know the Indian debates on Aravalli. It's very much in the contemporary TV channels, in
media, in governing systems, in academy, everywhere. So what the problem in Araboli and why it's become a problem, and how the theory, because Upasok said the theory, and how as a geographer, as an economist, as an environmental scientist, we have to rethink theoretically or critically challenge what's going on, and how neoliberalism, nature-based solution, and indigenous knowledge system can help us to understand all this problem going on, why this become a problem. Let's start with neoliberalism. What is neoliberalism and how it's linked with our current debate of nature-based solutions and indigenous knowledge systems. So we know that in 1992, India opened its market for the world. So it's economic concept. When economic saturations come down, and then it's slowly targeting the environment. I'm coming the waves and how we came to this stage 5 of these 3 debates: neoliberalism, nature-based solutions, and indigenous knowledge systems. I'm not going much details of what is nature-based solutions, how it's doing, and why we need, but I will give you the backbone of the theory. I've taken one part of nature-based solution, that is natural flood management. So we have other things, green infrastructure, ecological engineering. Nowadays, of the heat wave debate in the big cities of India, people are saying, okay, we need infrastructure plus green. So we have rooftop garden, we have garden in the world. So fancy designs came on in the AI infrastructures. So okay, now where is the social justice? Where is the climate justice? So if there is green solutions, so why these green solutions always capture the land of poor urban people, poor slums? So where the new model of smart wise cities, what Joravez discussed yesterday, in global north it's very easy because they have vacant land, they don't have much spacious of lower the slum problem. They don't have this pressure. So when it comes to the debate on in global south, like Indian cities, and we try to impose the Western concept of environmentalism or their idea, then it's become a large problem of climate justice and social justice. How we can link these two, climate justice, social justice, with this fancy term of nature-based solutions, and where the possibilities we have. So that's why we are trying a small exercise, how NFM is or how nature-based flood management is there in UK. Just a small exercise in this case study, and what the problem going on. So yesterday Joe is discussed lots about global problem, local problem, and how we can transfer knowledge from global north to global south. And it's not like transfer of knowledge should always be one way, from north to south. It could be from south to north. So that's why we have a strength. We have a like if we describe the Indian society, Indian environmentalism, so we have a 5,000 years of history you can say indigenous knowledge, or somebody saying Indian knowledge systems. So then where are the ideas of environmentalism here we have, and how this can help the global idea or global debate of nature-based solutions, natural flood management. I will try to integrate these things, or we are trying to these things to adopt or to discuss with global north academic, non-academic participants, how they are doing the natural flood management. So the topics of the way of natural management is little same, but as they have less pressures of social injustice, they can explore these activities, this technology very easily, very actively. But for here, so we have Professor, I don't know, like if Professor Karan just said here about Jal Bharo program in West Bengal. Why it has failed? That's the question. So same kind of program is there in global north, in Japan, in everywhere. But why we have failed? So is there anywhere, or is there something about we're missing the community? We're missing the community knowledge or community engagement. If so, then why and how? So that's why we need to integrate the indigenous and local knowledge in every new model, every new idea. which came from the global north of neoliberalism in the shape of nature-based solutions, and how we can reshape, we can argue, critically argue all this, and we can integrate our own knowledge systems. So, and again, three things: policy mobility, global homogeneity, and localization in every stage. In my recent article, I am working in Sundarban for last more than 12 years. Doing my PhD, post PhD, postdoc, and now my own project, or three living project, and three others projects. So, and then I try to understand in this 15 years of Sundarban, first government applied constructions model. If there is a flood, if there is a cyclone, we need to build bank, we need a concrete embankment. Till after Ayla, till 2015, after Amphan, this concept was hugely accepted by local and national, state level policies. Huge money has been distributed from the state, from the government. Okay, look, take your money and you can do concretizations of your island, and then slowly, when it's become much more chaotic and much more local political corruptions in panchayat in all levels, then they said, no, we can't survive the Sundarban with these concretizations, because every year the storm height has been increased. Previously, all these constructions was 12 meter and then 50 meter. They said, how long we can create a constructions? Then we have to adopt nature-based solutions. We need to create much more mangrove. Socially, we need to engage the MG Narega in this recreation of mangroves or regeneration of mangrove. Where we have land, we can put mangroves, and then there's a huge funding come from UN, other global bodies. Again, there's a problem. So where you have to plant these thousands of saplings of mangrove, then it's become a controversy of land of poor people. So in this article, I have argued that in the shape of nature-based solution, there is a encroachment or snatching the land from poor people of Sundarbans. It's going on, and there's a lot of example I have written in this article. So the global environmental policies favor. So if you read academic articles or policy article, you can say, oh, Sundarban is surviving, this much area has been increased mangrove, this island. What about the social justice? Where you get the land? Why this land become or came from poor, indigenous, Dalit or others people? Why not from any other way? So we need a debate how environmental solutions could be or should be a social justice and climate justice in a way. So NBS often follow Western model, global homogeneity, overlook local realities. So like all this funding coming from West, UN, etc., etc., etc. And then who are leading all this project? From where it was controlled, that which land will be replanted by mangrove, or maybe in a city, if there's a green infrastructure, then which land we will took to make it a green. So this debate should come in the academic systems, and we are the pioneer people. We should discuss like how this local knowledge or indigenous place-based knowledge can be an alternative for these solutions. Now I'm coming to the nature-based solutions. So yeah, before we understand why we need indigenous knowledge or local integrations or local solutions in this global debate, nature-based solutions, and all the terms or the new wave of nature-based solutions, we have to understand the past environmentalism in India. How, after or before freedom, environmentalism debate or environmentalism debate goes on, and we are now in a stage in 21st centuries, third decade of 21st centuries, and how we have to read this environmentalism debate. So broadly, Ramchandra Guha said that, okay, we have three wave in India, three wave of environmentalism. So I think we have discussed a lot with Professor Sharma. So and new those who are coming on nowadays, those who are writing, they said no, there's a five wave of environmentalism in India, and if we divide this debate with contemporary developmentalism and then now sustainable developmentalism, then water included and casteism, and then forest, land right, conservation. So I'm not going much details because time is short. Ajanullah is already said that you have only 50 minutes. So industrialization, environmental conflict, globalization, urbanization, and climate crisis, and then fifth wave, where we are living and where our project is trying to contribute something theoretically, something practically. That is new revelations, NBS, and sustainability. That is our definitions or our theorizations in our project. So we have a this is one of the projects, but we have a 3-4 small other projects going on in South Asia, including Bangladesh, including Nepal, Bhutan, India. So all these three areas. So we are trying to define that. Here is we are entering in the fifth wave of Indian environmentalism. So I'm not going much detail. You people know better that the first wave before freedom or before the independence, that is water impurity and casteism. So most of the people living in the village, more than 90% or 95%, and that time, water, access to water is the biggest problem because land was there, only agriculture systems is there. So we have to produce agriculture, we have lots of land, but access to water is the challenging for some societal people, those who are locals, those who are marginal in the society. So, and there's a big movement in India, Mahatsatyagраha by Ambedkar in 1927, and then it was slowly access to water become easier by the workers people also. And now it's I think that the debate is little less, but till maybe Professor Sharma will give you much detail like what's going on in access to water nowadays in urban, peri-urban or rural areas. And the second wave is a very important moment, Chipko, and we read all these moments in our textbook when we are in school. But why this Chipko happened, or why this similar kind of Chipko happened when India slowly started encroaching the forest, started taking the forest from the indigenous, tribal, or other people, and then it's become a conflict between land ownerships, land rights to the systems. So then Indian environmentalism had been shifted from access to water to access to land, or land become to home. So there was informality of land ownerships in the most of the tribal society. They don't have any formal agreement of land systems or land ownerships. And when this land ownership became a conflict, then some movement came on in Indian environmental debate. That's why it's a second wave of forest, land right, and conservations. And the third wave, India slowly started in the third phase of environmentalism, 1970, 80. That's time when the economy has been growing slowly till it is internal capitalism started. I'm not taking names, but those who are active in that phase, and then slowly post-independent development started. Anti-dam movement started because dam was going on. Pradhan Mantri, that time first Prime Minister said that dam is the temple of India. So slowly river has been encroached. Asking dams, we will come in our project like how small river is important nowadays. And then policy, public environmental advocacy challenge top-down development model, advocated people-centered and ecologically sensitive development. So that is the era of 1980 or before the 1992. of neoliberal era. And then stage four, globalizations, urbanizations, and climate crisis. Today, when we are coming in the car, in the vehicle, George said that, okay, I came India in 1972. So there was less vehicle in the city. City was a little clean. Yes? Okay. So, and then how Indian cities become suddenly. So also, if you see there's nowadays in many reels, Facebook, what's there? Instagram, you can see, oh, 1980s cities of Kolkata, how clean. The river was clean, the street was clean, but how suddenly after 90, Indian street become very unorganized, the pollutions, and nowadays the debate of AQI, everyone. So the fourth wave for environmentalism, the globalizations, urbanizations, and climate crisis. I'm not going much detail how, when, where, but it started in the more of the urban city, because urban population is rising from 5, 10, 20, and now more than close to 30%, or I don't know like how, but the statistics now, and then now the fifth wave. Here we are, the wave fifth, that is neoliberalism, NBS, and sustainability. All three ideas came through North, and we are living and we're adjusting these ideas, we're accepting this idea without critiquing, without debating. And we, through our research, we are challenging, look, if we have a small system, so that's we have chosen when we have discussions in our PI, co-PI, that why we need to choose this kind of topic. So I debate a lot with my collaborator, no, we have to do this, and this is something new, and we will challenge through this. So if you see the literature of Indian river systems or Indian river, you see most of the literature or most of academic literature are limited or discuss about big rivers, Ganga, Indus, all these big rivers. What about the small rivers? Yesterday I had a discussion with Shilibati. So research in small rivers are little less, and how community engagement or community participations is needed in this debate of restoring small river systems. As I said, nowadays NBS, nature-based solutions, is much more elitist, much more urban-centric, less in rural. But after 1 decade in research and in policy and everywhere, there would be a debate in rural areas. So, like Joseph, that we are discussing peri-urban growth in India. So now, why we should not start a debate like how? Because already Silaboti River Basin, the Ghatar Master Plan, become a national debate. How a master plan should be. In our research, we started another angle, how indigenous knowledge systems or indigenous thousands years of knowledge can contribute this Ghatar Master Plan. This is our idea, this is our background. Like, we are rethinking a national debate which is going on, and it's becoming controversy between center and state, and how a new thinking in an academic way can contribute in policy. That's why we make it like Upasok said that, okay, we have academic partner, we have non-academic partner, we have a policy partner, and we have ECR. So when we have submitted this idea to British Council and ICSSR, I'm finishing by 5 minutes, sorry, that, okay, this is a debate, this is going on, this is the background, and this is the action we need, and this way we are trying to do our research. And it's not a solving, or it's not a traditional project, it's a brainstorming, it's an idea sharing, it's a knowledge, a policy mobility, and knowledge exchange program. So it's not a one-way knowledge exchange program from UK or from global north to global south, it's a two-way knowledge exchange program. If we are able to establish an idea or an argument that MerseyRiver basins, or the people, those who are living in the upstream or downstream of Mersey, that is mostly on Santal tribe. So what we are saying, the indigenous policy. So our non-academic partner partner Mant will working with this how Santal traditions can contribute in Ghatar master plan or maybe in flood management in Silabati River Basin. So how Silaboti came? What are the background of name of the Silaboti? So it's a huge tribal Devi or tribal knowledge system is there. Their impurity, their conservation techniques are there. So we are slowly exploring all this texture, all this hidden knowledge those we have in this community. It was in informal way, just virtually. Sorry, it was in a folk way. We are trying to capture this knowledge. We are trying to document this knowledge. It's a very challenging thing because it's a debate like, okay, how reliable these knowledge systems in a very technocentric AI generations. Last day we had a debate like, okay, we are moving in everything should be English. All the AI system is English. How a non-written knowledge system can help in this big global centrifugal model. So that's why in this project, we try to make a debate how small river systems can be restored, can be rethink, including local solutions, including or engaging local people in a big debate, and how if we are able to found something, some knowledge system, some interesting thing through this tribal people of Silabati River basins, and then we'll when we prepare a report or something, and then we'll again go back to our UK partner, UK MerseyRiver Trust and others, UK British Council, like, look, from India, from Indian indigenous knowledge, indigenous people, we have these knowledge systems, particular character of saving a river. Is it possible to explore this idea in your Mersey River? So that's why it's a policy mobility. That's why it's a knowledge exchange, knowledge transformation. So thank you so much. So I'm not giving much details of our projects. This is a theory. So we're writing a paper. We're writing some more policies like how, why we need to rethink, why we need to engage the indigenous people. That's this our idea. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm not giving much details of green growth dogma. So again, as I said, when a theory came from global north, like fancy theory, oh, nature-based solutions. So we are attracted through this fancy term. Oh, nature-based solutions, so very beautiful. Oh, green, oh, rooftop garden can help us to reduce the heat wave. And garden within the roads can help. It was already there. It was already there in our traditional infrastructure. Everybody, if you read our ancient literature, Bengali literatures, every home have different kind of species, aam, jam, kathal. So how this aam, jam, kathal has been destroyed, and then they said, okay, you have to plant nature-based solutions. You have to plant trees in your what is the balcony or somewhere. How this become changed, and is it time to debate, or is it time to question them? Why you have taken our aam, jam, kathal, and then you are dictate us, you have to replant nature-based solution, and you have to take what is this rooftop fancy flower or something, some seed coming from US or UK, plant in your balcony. So why we should not take again academic debate of growth dogma, or if you landed in what is Bangalore airport, you will see, oh, all these species is very much more greeny, Bangalore airport, but no one is native species. All the species came from non-native. Why we have chosen a non-native species in a nature-based solutions? So we have to question this at least in the academic area, then it will come in policy. So yeah, now the last slide. Now, why local and indigenous knowledge systems can help to overcome this green growth dogma? Place-based solution again. So, if we choose to replant or re-green our, suppose, Kolkata airport, so why will we not choose Amdal Kathal? Why we have to choose something fancy sorry, my PI is saying you have to finish. Why you have to choose some urban or elitist PCs in your airport? So long-term ecological balance. We need a long-term ecological balance. Why? We have to rethink all this. So cultural, social, and ecological relationships with developmentalism. Again, if we Silaboti River basins, how their knowledge systems can help us rethink our systems. If we choose this, if we say like particularly to our research and adaptive context specific practice community well-being. This is all about our project. Thank you so much. So maybe we can discuss a lot or discuss all this debate and discussions next time when we have time. I think so we have a question answer now or okay later. Yeah, you are saying something? Yeah. Okay, sure. So we can discuss Q&A in the tea time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this immensely informative and engaging session. Your insights into policy mobility and community resilience have added immense value to today's proceedings.
We now move on to the next session of the day. Before we invite the speaker, allow us to briefly introduce our distinguished resource person for this session. Professor Mukul Sharma is a professor of environmental studies at Ashoka University. Before this, he was the professor at the Department of Development Communication and Dean Academics at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. His formal academic qualification is in political science. Since 1984, he has worked in academic, development, and media sectors. He has published 18 books and booklets in English and Hindi, the latest being Dalit Ecologies, Caste and Environment Justice, Green and Saffron, the RSS, Modi, and Indian Environmental Policies, Dalit or Prakriti, Jati or Bharatiya Paryavaran Andolan, Caste and Nature, Dalits, and Indian Environmental Politics, and Human Rights in a Globalized World, and Indian Diary. He has been a research fellow in several universities and institutions, including Mahidol University, Bangkok, United States Institute of Peace, Washington, D.C., and Cephas Scholar, International Institute of Social History, the Netherlands, London School of Economic and Political Science, and University of Oxford. Professor Sharma worked as a special correspondent in Navbharat Times, Delhi, and received 12 national and international awards for his environmental, rural, and human rights journalism. After that, he has been the director of Amnesty International and Heinrich Ball Foundation in India, the South Asia Director of Climate Parliament, and the Asia Campaign Advocacy and Policy Director of Action Aid International. The title of his lecture today is Living with Climate Change, Indigenous Knowledge and the Future of Indian Environmentalism. It is with great honor and respect that we invite Professor Mukul Sharma to kindly grace the dais. Sir.
Thank you very much. So, I don't need.
Now request our research scholars, Department of Geography, to kindly felicitate Professor. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. No, I don't. So, first of all, thank you very much, Professor Upasak Das and Dr. Mehboob Sahana, your Aliyah University or Manchester University or whosoever. It all came through to me through Professor Upasak when they invited me to University of Manchester to conduct program when I was traveling to University of Leeds. So My special thanks uh, also inviting me to Kolkata at a time when Delhi is really choking. So under the triple engine Sarkar. So it's a 1 day or 2 day respite from Delhi's air is something really great. So, so I feel so nice when I landed yesterday night at your airport. It was a good relief to be away from Delhi. So, I know I don't have PPT. I will be speaking through my notes. So, I research on the intersections of marginal communities, Dalit ecologies, caste and nature, environmental justice, and indigenous knowledge systems in India. And when we are today, or yesterday you began, sorry I couldn't come yesterday, natural flood management and indigenous knowledge system in building community resilience to climate-induced disaster, including floods. Uh, uh, it's crucial, and the way Mehboob actually tried to touch upon during his presentation, to recognize how Indian climate discourses has evolved and must continue to evolve to include, as you must have been discussing today also, it has been emphasized, must include the biases and perspective that have been marginalized. Yet, as we know, they have profound ecological wisdom. So, the framework which I wish to share with you draws from what I called, or possibly others must have called, indigenous ecologies. Uh, and indigenous ecologies could be an open, collaborative space to collate insights from indigenous, certainly, tribal, Adivasi, Santhal, you mentioned, but also from backward caste, uh, Dalit communities, other marginal communities, their histories, their socio-political thoughts, movements, organizations. So, indigenous ecologies here I put in a more inclusive, broader, open space. And when I say indigenous ecologies, this distinguished audience must be knowing that I am greatly influenced by the rich academic and political work globally developed around black ecologies, racial ecologies, we know feminist ecologies, uh, we have been working about Dalit ecologies, which try to analyze the interrelationship or intersection between identity, power, environmentalism, colonialism, through various kind of interdisciplinary lens. And when we say indigenous ecology as an open collaborative space which include tribal, marginal, Dalits, etc., we also must realize that each marginal community uh, can offer different or distinct vantage point to understand the ecological wisdom or ecological consequences of social hierarchies or their various manifestations in Indian society. It won't be one voice. It won't be one Santhal voice, or it won't be one Dalit voice. It could be multiple voices. The indigenous groups, the lower caste, the lowest, they all can, in my understanding, illuminate different aspects of power structure, relationship with environment, vulnerability, possibilities, and then we can create if we are open, we can create a rich collage, different voices, and that collage can be a reality. So now the other point that how much time you were here? I was told 45 minutes, but you tell me accordingly I will structure. Okay, so because I know we started a bit late, so I don't. So in my understanding, this talking about indigenous environmental perspective or whatever the title suggests, it appears actually intersection of three critical development of the 21st century of our time. First, we all know there is an increased political integration of how power structures, environmental access, use and governance across all spheres of society, and this huge academic and political interest try to understand that how power structure manifested through caste, marginality, subjugation, domination are produced and reproduced in many, many spheres of our environmental politics. Whether you are talking about environmental management, resource distribution, climate policy, and so on and so forth. So that is the one critical development of 21st century. The second critical development of this century is the globalization of environmental justice movement that has expanded beyond localized concern about pollution, its exposure to different kind of population, and this globalization of environmental justice politics has demonstrated that environmental justice is about social transformation, directed towards meeting basic human needs and enhancing quality of life. So this is the second intersection that we see in 21st century. And the third, we see that there has been a significant rise of indigenous and marginal communities' political and cultural assertion. This is marked by, as I said, this is marked by regional differences, various kind of localized histories, ideologies, interest, power struggles. But these movements, the movements of indigenous and marginal communities, are simultaneously about articulating their position on space, environment, natural and physical resources, as well as achieving their political representation, identity, development, power. So these are both. So now I would also like to emphasize here that when we are talking about the indigenous knowledge, indigenous politics, or politics of marginal communities, including Dalit communities, we must realize that these indigenous politics or marginal politics have traveled a long distance in the past 30 to 40 years in thinking and activism. And understanding this evolution is also crucial for appreciating the contemporary relevance of so-called indigenous knowledge to climate adaptation and flood management. Now, the fundamental question that shaped early environmental activism among marginalized communities was basic. Mehboob actually tried to touch upon that how can communities secure their place on earth when they have been systematically denied access to land, water, forest, and other natural resources. However, as your workshop recognizes very decently, there is a now critical evolution of occurring. One that that indigenous communities and their knowledge, not only dealing with the historical injustices, but they are also trying to address the various kind of contemporary issues which are getting manifested through climate change challenges, through climate adaptation and disaster resilience, and so on and so forth. So now I will And it's not a simple shift. When we are talking about the development of environmentalism coming through the voices and visions of Dalit and indigenous communities, it's a complex evolution that reflects several dynamics. I will just highlight a few just to give a ideological framework. First, that we must understand that the indigenous ecologies, which I defined earlier, that's open space, today are very much hybrid in nature, where different regimes of production and relationship to nature exist simultaneously. Indigenous lives have been profoundly transformed under industrial, technological, and urban development, accompanied by increasing politicization, mobilization, migration, communication, power dynamics. People have been migrating, they are moving from traditional arenas and works, from rural villages urban centers, from localized struggles to national, international movements. So this is a hybrid in nature. Despite complexities, where environment cannot be separated from the project of economic and social hegemony, you can still say that different kind of indigenous communities are also getting conscious about their own environmentalism, even though it is hybrid in nature. They are visualizing environmental justice based on rights that affirms both material and cultural claims in nature. So that is the first. Second is the other point that should be kept in mind, this complex evolution of environmentalism, the political economy aspect and environmental struggle. The understanding indigenous environmental knowledge requires examining the political economy that shape access to natural resources and environmental benefits. In asserting claims to natural resources and fighting for access, communities of various indigenous nature raise questions that go to the heart of environmental management. What constitutes an environmental struggle? Is it simply a claim of natural resources? Does it also imply baseline conservation of resources along with security of livelihood? Is it a process of also cultural consciousness, raising about identity, history, traditional practices that you all are talking about? Does it signify also gaining political power beyond environmentalism? Does it hold some distinct connotation for how we understand nature and human relationship to it? And these questions, in my understanding, are also very relevant for natural flood management. When we discuss flood control and water management, whose knowledge counts? Who benefits from various kind of intervention that we all are talking about? Who bears the cost of both floods and flood management infrastructure? We know that indigenous communities have historically been displaced by dams, mega dams, embankments, built in the name of flood control. So any contemporary approach to NFM must grapple with some of these political economy questions. So this is the second. Third is the journey from environmental to climate justice. The framework of environmental justice, which you must have been discussing, Mahbub also talked about, articulated widely since 1980s or even before 1980s, provide certain crucial foundation for understanding indigenous environmental knowledge. Now, however, research and movements in India have not sufficiently focused on environmental justices along lines of caste, indigeneity, and marginalization. Now, when people like you and universities like you are trying to make for the indigenous communities their knowledge. They are, and including the issue of flood, climate justice, they're making certain very distinct cases, uh, which includes, I would like to point out, at least 3, 4, 5 things. A, recognition and respect. How individuals and communities are recognized officially, unofficially, in policy discourse as crucial for distribution of environmental benefits and burden. So that is the first. How do we recognize? B, how do we take experience as knowledge foundation? Environmental experiences of marginalized communities have been often excluded from dominant narrative of environmentalism. So how do we take experience as knowledge foundation? C, spatial dimensions of inequality. From resource distribution to climate vulnerabilities like flooding and drought, the production of spaces of inequality has complex historical, cultural, and geographical dynamics requiring our attention at multiple scales. D, community agency and leadership that you were really sensitive about and you were traveling to those areas, that how indigenous and marginalized communities assert and get recognized their right to speak for themselves without me or Mahbub being their spokesperson, demanding recognition of their expertise, knowledge, and priorities in environmental action. Now, so coming to the next pillar, how much time do we have? Okay, thank you. So now coming to your specific topic, indigenous knowledge and natural flood management. As I said, the relevance of indigenous knowledge to natural flood management crucial become really clear when we examine how communities have historically understood and related to water, land, seasonal pattern, and their knowledge is not merely historical or cultural. It's practical, I would say adaptive, remarkably could be sophisticated in its understanding of complex hydrological and ecological system. It could have diverse aspects. I will just highlight in bullet points. One is that I say the knowledge about earth and earthy environment in indigenous ecologies, and I'm just repeating in different words. We find multiple connotation of earth inform flood management practices. Earth is understood cultural symbol, guiding organism habitability and vulnerability, and center of earthy environment. Consider in my fieldwork, I have found many in North and Western India, how earth worship is found widely among indigenous and marginalized communities across different regions and traditions. Communities worship earth in various forms, sometimes as shaped molds and placed under trees, sometimes through specific rituals during agricultural seasons, sometimes through daily practices that acknowledge dependence on soil and water, and these practices embody deep understanding of local ecologies. Now, second, and I'm leaving this part because of the paucity of the time, I have a written, I will be happy to circulate among you people. The second important that I would like to underline is the issue of labor, mobility, and environmental knowledge. These indigenous environmental narratives are extraordinarily rich with descriptions of rain, river, fish, forest, hills, lands, and agriculture. And critically, these narratives also highlight the centrality of labor and lived experience in defining relations between society and nature. Labor is experienced as unending reproduction of social life, carrying whole economic and social processes and human production of future. The experiential knowledge of working with natural system, including flood and flood-prone landscape, represents actually generations of accumulated wisdom about environmental management that is encoded not in written manuals, but in bodily practices, seasonal rhythms, and community traditions. Consider just the knowledge, and you have many in West Bengal, the knowledge and the labor embedded in fishing communities. Uh, Marginal fishing caste describe going to river to catch fish using various traditional methods, sometime in clothes, sometime in balls, sometime by making puddles in sand and removing water. They describe using plant materials with specific properties to manage fish productions, understanding of river behaviors during different seasons, knowledge of how rivers shrink in summer and swell during monsoon. This intimate knowledge coming through labor of river system, how they behave, who lives in them, how to sustainably harvest from them, is precisely the kind of understanding needed for effective flood management that works with rather than against the natural system. So this is the second point. Now the third point, and here many things can be taken on board about their sophisticated knowledge, which crops to plant in which micro topographies based on flood risk, how to use seasonal flooding to replenish the soil nutrients, when to plant and harvest based on flood cycles, how to construct temporary structure that witnessed flooding, which trees and vegetation provide flood protection, how to maintain drainage channels and natural water flow. So a couple of these things can be taken. The third thing which I wanted to highlight within this thing, that the issue of technology and resilience. The marginal communities, indigenous community, though this world is also problematic, but I'm not getting into that discourse, have consistently, historically employed different technologies, skills, and knowledge for sustenance and progress. It's not that we are having progress only in this century. The challenge lies in recognizing and integrating these knowledges and these technologies and systems with contemporary approaches to disaster resilience and climate adaptation. In both natural and social setting, indigenous technologies can offer insights for many things, like understanding early warning system, designing a resilient infrastructure informed by local condition, preserving biodiversity that support flood regulations. So the other point is the historical and climate knowledge that one can think about. Indigenous experience of climate and environmental predates dominance climate scientific narrative and can offer crucial perspective for planning. This knowledge has deep roots in local histories and context. They can be again many, the everyday and ordinary. In the climate science and climate discourse, we are talking about the high points. But rather than focusing solely on higher points or higher events or the long-term trends that could be important, indigenous knowledge also emphasizes day-to-day, season-to-season variations, the ordinary, every challenges of agricultural timing, water availability, weather prediction that shape our survival. Other could be cyclic rather than linear temporality. Concepts are often cyclic, based on seasonal and generational patterns, rather than the linear progressive emphasized in the contemporary climate sciences. This cyclic understanding recognizes that environmental conditions fluctuate within longer pattern. Third could be language of lived experiences. These express climate relationship through affect and experiences, heat, cold, wetness, dryness, difficulty, ease, rather than solely through scientific metrics. When I went to Manchester, I presented the sensory politics of climate change and just long-term observation. I must emphasize that many times we talk about indicators. There could be traditional indicators. Why not? Environmental signs that predict weather and seasonal changes, bird behaviors, plant flowering patterns, insect activities, cloud formation, wind patterns, developed through centuries of close observation. So traditional indicators, and so on and so forth. So a couple of these things. Now, coming to the final part of it, which is also important for this session, in 5 minutes, the climate justice and indigenous rights. Various organizations with whom you're working, I also work with various organizations. Those who try to represent these communities are asking for at least few things. A, recognition of social hierarchy and marginalization as critical categories in climate discourse. B, inclusion of, which we discuss, indigenous knowledge in climate adaptation planning. C, equitable treatment in addressing climate issues. D, the inseparable link between social justice and environmental justice. So that's why we very often now hear how the slogan like climate justice is social justice. So now, if we take into that account the way organizations are trying to raise the issue, indigenous perspective actually challenge us to, again I would say, recognize differential experiences. Not all humans have contributed equally to climate crisis or environmental degradation, and so on and so forth. So recognize these differential experiences. B, that we all are trying to do, document alternative histories through art, oral traditions, literature, cultural expressions. How do we document this environmental transformation from their perspective? Third, equally important, imagine alternative futures. How do we see these voices and visions as alternative sites of possibility for building alternative relationship with environment, visions of sustainability, reciprocity, and justice. Fourth, how do we take eco-literally and folk these into account, which are coming through stories, poems, folk tales, oral histories, and in many, many other forms. So, and these actually various practical implications for natural flood management, which I just briefly touched upon. How do we, which you are doing, trying to do, document and do the co-production of knowledge. How do we, again, institutionalize the recognition of knowledge? How do we, again, I began with this term, develop a hybrid approach. When I say hybrid approach, I mean that the most effective flood management will likely combine, in my understanding, indigenous knowledge with contemporary science and technology. Using traditional environmental indicators along with modern monitoring system, incorporating traditional vegetation management into engineered flood control, combining community-based early warning system with technological forecasting, designing infrastructure that works with rather than against the traditional land use patterns, and ultimately, it all will be requiring to address the power dynamics. The power dynamics, the politics of power, the political representation, and whose agency. Now, in closing, you can take this slide. I want to emphasize here, my dear colleagues and friends, that incorporating indigenous knowledge into natural flood management is not about romanticizing the past or treating the traditional practice as museum pieces, whether you are going here or there. It is about recognizing that communities who have lived with floods for generations have also developed sophisticated understanding of water, land, and climate that remain relevant. Uh, Increasingly relevant, I would say, in our changing world. It is about building flood management approaches that work with natural processes rather than against them, that support community resilience rather than displacing communities, that recognizes the link between environmental sustainability and social justice. It is about creating space for different knowledge systems to inform each other, for technical expertise and lived experiences to work together, for top-down planning and bottom-up wisdom to combine. So thank you very much, and I really enjoyed being here. I'm sorry that I could not be present yesterday, and all your coming days. Hope to contribute in your portion my little bit of drops. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable insights and expertise with us. Your lecture has been both engaging and intellectually stimulating, and we are grateful for the perspectives you have brought to this program. We now move ahead to the next academic engagement of the day. Before we invite the speaker, we would like to briefly acquaint the audience with our distinguished speaker for this session. Professor Amrit Sen is reader in English at the Department of English and Other Modern European Languages, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan. He has won the Outstanding Thesis Award for his book, The Narcissistic Mode, Metafiction as a Strategy in Moll Flanders, Tom Jones, and Tristram Shandy. He is interested in travel writing and has recently won the UGC Research Award for his project titled The Self and the World in Tagore's Travel Writings. He also takes a keen interest in the history of science in India, especially the writings of Acharya Prafulla Chandra Roy. Professor Sen would be speaking on narratives of deluge, floods and Indian responses.
It is our privilege to invite Professor Amrit Sen to kindly grace the dais. We request the research scholars of the Department of Geography to kindly felicitate Professor Sen.
Right. Thank you to Aliyah University and the other affiliating organizations. When I was invited to this conference, I was extremely puzzled because, as a teacher of literature, I wondered what I could contribute to this conference, apart from being the IKS director of the director of the IKS Center of my university. But over the course of the lectures that I have attended today, I think I am taking back more than what I am probably going to talk about. Some very interesting perspectives have been opened up to me. Now, I'm going to talk about three literary texts, one by Tagore and two by the noted activist and finest novelist of our times from Indian writing in English, Amitabh Ghosh. Right? The two being Hungry Tide and Gun Island, which are both based in the Sundarbans. And I was very fascinated with Mehboob, your paper, which talked about the different experiments in Sundarban, and Professor Sharma's paper, which talked about the importance of folk and other kinds of indigenous knowledge systems in the process of looking at floods. Now, why have I taken these three texts, one by Tagore and two by Amitabh Ghosh? Primarily because they talk about narratives of deluge. Amitabh Ghosh, of course, talks about storms as well, but Rabindranath is talking about a deluge in Muktadhara. And all of them interrogate how knowledge about water, floods, interact with human beings on land and are mediated through narrative, especially myths and fantasies. Using the theoretical framework of the blue humanities, I argue, threatened with the specter of ecological disaster, myths and fantasies provide a local knowledge system sensitizing the ordinary people about flood and its preventions. I'm also interested in understanding how this representation, just as the environmental perspectives have changed, I'm interested in understanding how representational strategies have changed. You see, Tagore is writing at a point of time when modernism is taking root in India. And Amitabh Ghosh is writing in almost 100 years later. Muktadhara is published in 1921. Now, together with the red oleanders, the waterfall of the Muktadhara has been seen as part of a third phase of Tagore's dramatic career, where he predominantly relies on the symbolic mode. Now, therefore, the dominant mode that Tagore is using is allegory and symbolism. And it talks about an imaginary location called Chitrakoot, ruled by the dictatorial king Ranajit. Chitrakoot is dependent on its financial might on Shiftarai, and consequently, Ranajit attempts to control it by denying the people water by building a dam across the waterfall Muktadhara. You see, even before Nehru was talking about large dams as being the temples of India, here is talking about the problem of large dams and inequitable distribution of water across two different sets of people. The play charts the hostilities between the citizens of the two areas and the non-violent resistance to Ranajit by the enigmatic singer and Shonnashi, Dhananjoy Boiraki. Lurking in the background is the gigantic machine built by the royal engineer Vibhuti that towers above the temple of Bhairav. The heir to the throne, Abhijit, a foundling adopted by the king. Notice, the two heroes here. One is a sannyasi who does not belong to society at all, but who engages with it, and a foundling who does not really have a status in society, but is the heir apparent to the king. Learns that he was discovered by the side of the waterfall, Abhijit, and nurtures a deep association with the free-flowing Muktadhara. His love for the freedom of the waterfall and his refusal to allow the king to exploit the people of Shiftarai prompts him in the climax of the play. Is it better now? There's a feedback, I guess. I think we can hear and understand each other. I think that's the most important thing. Right, so his love for the freedom of the waterfall and his refusal to allow the king to exploit the people of Shiftarai prompts him in the climax of the play to demolish the machine and let loose the force of the waterfall. So he creates a flood, and in the process too, he is swept away. It's very interesting how Tagore frames three kinds of discourses within the play. The first is the incantatory power of the new modern machine. You see, this is marked by Vibhuti, the engineer, who says, Namo Jantra, Namo Jantra, Namo Jantro. And Tagore gives an elaborate song for this. He says, we salute the machine, loud with its rumblings of wheels, quick with its thunder flame, hurling against obstruction in fiery defiance, that melts iron, crushes rocks, and drives the inert from the rest. We salute the machine. On the other hand, you also have the incantatory music of the sannyasis who periodically come and talk about Shankara and Vairav, threatening or articulating the threat that the machine sort of positions to the people of Shivtarai. Placed in between these two discourses is the discourse of Dhananjay Boiragi, who uses several baul songs in the text. One of the major songs which many of us are familiar with is Ami Marer Sagar Pari Debo, I will sail on the sea of beatings, as it were. I'll take beatings or I'll take suffering if necessary. Baul song, as you will understand, once again, is of modernity to arrive and control. Now, when I was listening to Professor Sharma's discourse, I was thinking of how, oppositional voices, articulations are represented within the three discourses present in Muktadhara, where the flood becomes, or water becomes, a source of a question of justice. And, climate justice was not probably a term that Tagore would have been familiar with, but he was thinking about it in a very large way. He was working, as Mehboob pointed out, with Patrick Geddes in greening the locality. He was introducing stakeholder politics of, incorporating Santhal architecture into his Shantiniketan building. He had articulated the thesis that the tallest building in the university would not be taller than the tallest tree. So environmental thinking was part of the process. And therefore, Tagore talks about how, the dam is important in the sense that it can control the flood, but the dam is also an anathema because it creates injustice between the people. And therefore, in a letter to Kalidas Nag, Tagore writes that the machine is an important part of the play. The machine has injured the spirit of life, and it is with this spirit that Avijit has destroyed the machine, not with another machine. Those who exploit with the help of the machine make a drastic mistake. They kill the humanity that is within them also. Right? So here is Tagore offering us a perspective at the beginning of the 20th century of how, different stakeholders approach this and how, local music becomes a form of a resistance to a hegemonic discourse. Now, we have talked about narratives, but it's equally important to understand how local music, how local forms of dances respond to such intrusions. Here uses a multiple layer of narratives which depend on memory, especially flood memory, right? The first and the oldest narrative that he, of course, uses is the narrative of the Bon Bibi. Now, many of you are aware of the Bon Bibi legend, which incidentally brings the Hindus and the Muslims together. It begins with the Bismillah. And you see, here is Bon Bibi, and here is Shah Jongli, and here is Dokhin Roy, who is who rules over the forests and who is eliminated, or not eliminated, who is cast off by Bon Bibi. And there is a clear demarcation that Bonbibi makes, that this is the land that Dokhin Rai will inhabit, and this is the land that the people will inhabit. So the forest and the agricultural land of the Sundarbans is, as it were, kind of demarcated by this imaginary line that that Bonbibi creates. And it is this that is crossed by Dhona, who offers his nephew Dukhe to Bonbibi, and ultimately Bonbibi persuades or intervenes, and Dukhe is saved. This is the broad rubric of the story. The second narrative that is woven into the story is the narrative of Lord Canning and the establishment of the settlement that Lord Canning made on the banks, embankments of the river Matla, and the way in which the entire place is swept away by the floods, and how despite the warnings of meteorologists, Canning persisted, and within 15 years the entire settlement was lost. But interesting is the third narrative that Ghosh is weaving into it, the narrative of Morid Chapi. And we know that a lot of people from Dandokanarno in Madhya Pradesh during the time of partition wanted to migrate to Morid Chapi, and the government of the time ruthlessly sort of destroyed them, killing many of them in the name of conservation, right? So once again, this question arises: who does the jungle belong to? How much of intervention should the human make? And what is the role of the non-human within it? Right. Now, where does the question of the storm and the flood come in? This is an episode, especially at the end, where Fokir and Pia, the two protagonists, cling on to trees. And here are ways in which Ghosh says that local knowledge about storms and floods are integrated within the narrative. The first is in the behavior of the Irrawaddy dolphin. So the non-human is also an important parameter through which indigenous knowledge systems operate. Pia looks at the behavior of the non-human in predicting the floods. Second, as Professor Sharma was pointing out, the local fishermen who discovered the advent of the floods and the storms by certain weather patterns, the stillness, the abrupt heat, and the breakage of the storm. The change in the daily flooding patterns, the Jowar and the Bhati, which is looked at by the more experienced fishermen. So flood memory, as it were. See, they look at certain events that take place and predict that this could happen because the circumstances had been similar earlier. But as the novel points out, and Ghosh is pointing out, that there is the more scientific oriented Nirmal, who talks about building cyclone shelters, which become very important in preserving the people during floods. So as Professor Sharma was talking about, it is a hybrid model that Ghosh is representing, that it is indigenous knowledge which is coupled with more scientific awareness about how floods can be, human resilience can be generated against flood. Now, along with this, there's also a gender perspective added, especially in the role of Nilima, Nirmal's wife, who is running the Badabol Trust. And I presume you are going to one of these trusts that also run certain programs across the river. But what the Badabon Trust does in Amitav Ghosh's novel is provides education for the widows, prepare them for alternative livelihoods. So that, you see, when we think about the floods, we in general think about how male earning members are washed away. But Ghosh is also at pains to point out how the women of the Sundarbans, for example, wear white saris, which the widows wear wherever their husbands go out to fish, anticipating, that death might strike at any point. So the psychological dimension of living within a space where water is a kind of sustainable, is a source of sustainability as well as a source of sustenance, rather, sorry, as well as a perennial indicator of death, is something that Ghosh points out. I would like to remind you of, and in this case, since our US partners are present, of the Irish dramatist J.N. Synge, who talked about the Aran Islands in Ireland, where the people who lived on fish never learned how to swim because they believed more in fate than in the intervention of the human, as it were. So it's interesting in the way in which Ghosh provides a local perspective of how the people use legends to think, to feel, and to articulate about floods. What is interesting is Ghosh's movement to the next novel, where the same set of characters are used, but the novel is placed across the globe. And Ghosh here is talking about, the flooding not only in the Sundarbans, but he's also talking about the flooding in Venice at the same time. Now, one of the things that we have not talked about is what happens when resilience fails. What happens, for example, Ghosh points out, and I'm not detailing out the parts from the novel, for example, when the storm Ayla hit, it sort of created so much havoc that all forms of resilience were punctured. So what happens to the people then? We have the concept of the climate refugee. The people from Bangladesh and from Bengal who are now forced to migrate to Venice, for example. And in Venice, the protagonist of Ghosh's Gun Island, Dean, for example, finds that Bengali is almost a second language. Now, many of you who have been to Italy, and I have been part of that experience, I have found more Bengalis in Italy than any other European place, right? So, so he's talking about how the authentic Italian experience is handled by people caused by Bengali migration. So when we talk about climate justice, we must equally talk about climate migration as well. One of the major things that Ghosh also points out, arrival of the blue boat on the Italian shores and the tremendous conflict that is generated within the Italian government about whether to let the refugee boat land or to sink it or to let it drift. Now, at this point of time, what happens is that points out that a miracle happens, as it were, where the dolphins, the birds, bioluminescence occurs together, so that the mayor announced miracle has indeed taken place and the boat is allowed to land. Now, what is interesting is here Ghosh using the legend of the Banduki Sodagar, or the merchant who had built a shrine in the Sundarbans dedicated to the goddess of the snakes, Ma Manusha, right? A shrine which had provided shelter to people and prevented them from being deluged, from facing the deluge of the flood earlier during the Bhola cyclone. So here is the Bhola cyclone and here is the Ayla cyclone, and the memory, the cultural memory of the Banduki Sodagar coming back. Now, the shrine which is erected to the goddess, therefore, acts as a kind of a buffer or a balance where people can take shelter. Interestingly, the Banduki Sodagar is also a legend where this merchant travels from Goa to Turkey to Egypt and then to Venice with a Jewish merchant in town. And he arrives at a time when the plague is roosting over Europe. So what Ghosh is trying to point out is that, it is not only now, but also at times when geological phenomena take place, when there is, global cooling, for example, across the North Americas and the Northern Hemisphere, which caused, in many opinions, the plague, that the problem of climate justice and the problem of the non-human world is also global rather than merely local, right? Now, the question is, and what Ghosh asks is, and this being primarily a geographer's conference, is how do we create mass awareness about such climate issues? And Ghosh asks, why the modern novel has not been able to meet the task to communicate the uncanniness, the improbability, the magnitude, and the interconnectedness of the transformations that are now underway. So he asks, what kind of fictions do we need to write now? And he says that the modern realist novel, which we have been used to, is not a form of fiction that is capable anymore of imparting this reality. He talks about a fiction that will use the mythical. He talks about a fiction that will talk about the use of the uncanny, the non-human, which will talk about climate justice, which will talk about climate migration, and which will alert the Northern Hemisphere about the historical process through which such climate migration is being caused, and therefore the need to accept the result of such climate migration. Ghosh's fiction thus takes his reader to an outpouring of hope, which literature does, a surging of goodness, love, charity, and generosity as it appears in the Gun Island. I will conclude by saying that what my paper has brought out is how at different epochs, literature has reacted differently to floods. For Tagore, at the juncture of modernism, the debate was a moment of the Anthropocene about the possible effect of human intervention on water. For Ghosh, the Sundarbans initially provides a local context, where the catastrophic effect of the Anthropocene can be countered by a balance of legend and science. In Gun Island, it is a more global problem where floods, displacement, and migration needs a fictional miracle. Yet, that is the power of literature, to harness indigenous belief that the universal struggle can continue. And it is in this articulation of flood memory and mythical memory that the role of indigenous systems in countering floods can be important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this engaging and thought-provoking lecture. Your reflections have added a valuable humanistic dimension to this program and have enriched through nuanced cultural and literary insights. We're really grateful to you, sir.
We now move forward to the next segment of the day, which is designed as a training-oriented session and will focus on applied and collaborative learning.
Kindly bear with us. We'll begin this session shortly. Before Before we invite the speaker, allow us to briefly introduce our distinguished resource person for this session. Professor Joe Rivets is the director of Mind Lab, Laboratory for Collective Intelligence and Future Cities Design at the Manchester Urban Institute, UK, a global online community working on the mapping and design of pathways from smart to wise. He also leads the Future Wise Cities team for the Manchester Urban Institute with both local and global programs. He is author of two landmark texts, The New Deeper Urban Institute, City Collective Intelligence and the Pathways from Smart to Wise, the previous city region 2020, integrated planning for a sustainable environment, and nearly 100 publications, both academic and professional. He is currently on the editorial boards of Urban Planning and Design at the Foresight and visiting professor at the University of Baja, California, Mexico, and the University of the Brawijaya, Indonesia.
With due respect, we invite Professor Zorovitz to kindly take his place and to kindly take the session forward and guide us through the training process.
Good morning. So, this is not to be greedy and take my second speaking slot to talk about my ideas. I'm more interested now in your ideas. And the first thing is, how is everybody feeling? Is anybody a little bit cold, like me? Raise your hand. I don't know if possible to make this place warmer. I've come all the way from Manchester, and the weather is just the same in Manchester. Never mind, that's fine. The second thing is about the interactive process. So if you want to be involved, and I really hope you are involved in the coming days in this interactive process, please move a little closer if you can. That would be really helpful to you and to me. Really, being on a stage with, an auditorium is not the right setting. It would be better to be around a big table. But that's not possible, so let's just get a little bit closer. Thanks. Third thing is, you'll see a whole set of links. One or two of these are now on the WhatsApp community. If you didn't sign up already, please sign up. It's a very good way to communicate and keep the discussion going. In the meantime, I've introduced a structured online discussion, and the reason for that is we can then bring AI to bear. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, AI is incredibly powerful. I'm now, a convert, and I got a big shock the other day because I put the theme of this workshop. I started a document to ask the foresight questions, meaning, okay, we have all this knowledge, where do we want to go with it? Can we achieve what we want to achieve, which is to get natural flood management into the hands of the people, so to say, or enable and empower the tribal communities, the low-income communities, and so on, to live in a sustainable world. That's a big task. The foresight process is one way to do that. One way to approach that. Now that we have the potential and power of AI at our fingertips, we have to say, so if AI simply produces more and more and more information, and literally the outline for this workshop was produced in about 10 seconds on Claude, it's very, very good. then so what do the humans do? Are we all, redundant? Could we replace half the people in this room with robots? I'm sorry to raise the question, but this is what we're now asking in our part of the world. So the process which we have in mind is really quite experimental. At the moment, as I think I mentioned briefly yesterday, we have an international collaboration with Manchester, Beijing, and now Calcutta. So I'm very pleased to include Calcutta, Bengal, in this international collaboration. And what we're doing is to experiment actively and interactively with AI as a tool to enable the humans to grow their collective intelligence, the collective human intelligence, CHI, or Chi for short, combined with AI. The result is chai, which is a very popular drink in India, so I hear. Anyway, so process. And the outline looks like this. I think if anybody who was here yesterday will recognize some of the graphics on the screen. We have an in-person discussion. This may take place on Friday in a somewhat reduced form, but we hope to compare notes as we go along. So starting tomorrow evening after the field trip before dinner, and Thursday evening after the field trip before dinner, we'll take half an hour to 1 hour, as much as we need, I think, to say, okay, so we are seeing and talking and looking at information. And on the field trip, it will be very exciting because this is not PowerPoints, presentations, this is the real thing out there. And also inputs from the tribal people. Fantastic. So where we started yesterday was to put up some idea of the knowledge mapping. You see the green bit in the middle of the screen, and I'll illustrate where that has got to so far. Then we have the circular thing, a 4-stage process, and underneath that we have an icon for the mural workspace, the interactive workspace. These have all been developed over quite a few years. The online workspace really took off in the pandemic because suddenly our global project, which included Indian partners in Chennai, by the way, this was suddenly online, no travel allowed. So I said, okay, we will produce, a workspace that replicates as far as possible the synergy effect of a face-to-face meeting. You'll notice on the left-hand side, well, we have our expert speakers. These are represented as little spheres of knowledge and feeling and so on. We are making AI summaries of what they are saying. Why would we do that? Well, because we can then feed it more easily into the knowledge mapping. And I'll show you in a minute the first stage of that. We also have a dedicated AI system. It's called Preempt. And this is configured to produce high-level foresight reports. And when we say foresight, we basically are assessing the state that we're in and the challenge, looking into the future, all the different possibilities, then coming back to the present with a plan of action or a roadmap. So this is not only to say, oh, we've done some research here and these are the numbers and so on. This is really a proactive approach. Again, to say, if we are serious and we want to take this NFN back to policy and to business and to the indigenous people and the peasants and everybody, civil society, yeah, we have to get our act together. It's not actually enough to have expert presentations and slides and then a report at the end. And from my experience, most of the time you give the report to the policymaker and they say, thank you very much, we'll put it on the shelf. But we have an election to think about first, or we have no money, and so on. You're all familiar with it. So we try to do better, and this is where the concept of the collective human intelligence comes in. So you can see roughly we are making AI summaries where they are useful, and they are useful only as far as they can enable the collective human intelligence. firstly between the people in this meeting and our colleagues, and then more importantly, between the policymakers, the business, the civil society, and so on. How do we do that? Well, in the form of a roadmap. But this is not just a report on the shelf, this is an evolving action plan. This is a big challenge, but I don't see any alternative if we're serious about what we're doing. We want natural flood management. We think this has huge potential in a very challenging world of climate change, so on. So this is what we are trying to do. You'll see also in the bottom right-hand corner a crowd intelligence. Well, this is what we want to do, but we're not quite ready yet. Maybe in the next phase, if I come back, actually I will be back in September, we will be further advanced and we can share what we know about mobilizing the crowd intelligence with these techniques. And this, I think, could be very important for the communication with the indigenous people for a start. Okay, so a brief roundup, and then I'll show you where we're up to. And these are the various questions that we're asking. Okay, well, yesterday we saw briefly the online workspace. It's a large board in the mural system. I'll come back to that in a moment. I'll show you the live thing in a moment. You'll see on the left-hand side there are presentations. Mine is there. Again, to repeat, if any speakers can send their slides or a link to their slides, I will put them on the whiteboard so that everybody can see. You don't have to take photos of the slides. This is basic stuff. Also then, in the resources section, there is a set of documents already produced by AI. And some of them are really very high quality. It's actually scary to me, who've spent my whole life doing this and processing knowledge, creating knowledge. Suddenly to say, just ask the machine, it will come back in 5 or 10 seconds. It's scary. So let's see the interactive version. Just to remember, here's the people, humans. We use a 4-stage process. This has been evolved over about 25 years in many projects in many countries, and it's still evolving, but the basics are pretty clear. And I can say it's not perfect, but it works for this kind of purpose of envisioning a transformative future and working towards achieving it. In more detail, the process has 4 stages. First, we talk about the problem. Then we talk about the future scenarios. Then we talk about synergies, visions, new ideas, new ways of working together. And then we talk about roadmaps or pathways, which is, okay, so what do we do? Briefly, I'll show you examples of each of these. Stage 1, we saw the actors around the table. And in the challenge that we face, well, there are new actors which are not included here, actually. This is a UK example. We don't have tribal people. But so, okay, we need to revise that and improve it for this situation. We saw briefly yesterday the knowledge mapping of all the different types of knowledge, technology, environment, social, economic, political, cultural. We put NFM in the middle because that is our topic. And then as we go along, we can systematically look for relationships between the different knowledges. We looked briefly at stage 2, which is looking into the future and the idea of alternative scenarios. It would be interesting to say, okay, if we're serious about the NFM challenge, then we know that the world in 20 years from now may not be the same as it is today. It's already very confusing and challenging. It may be more so. How could that work? What are the possibilities this way or that way? So we can start to draw a very simple graph. The cartoons help to illustrate. If we were doing a full-scale exercise, we would take some time to think more creatively. And this is maybe where the the literary approach mentioned by the previous speakers really comes in and is a really useful and valuable way to go. I'm just aware that many of the speakers are still having tea. Do you think we could invite them into the room, because it's actually quite important? Excuse me. Do you want to come in? Because I'm explaining the method which I'm trying to use in the next couple of minutes. And I just also mentioned the importance of lateral thinking. And here are some of the possibilities. This is an example from another project. And also we use pictures a lot. This in my CV somewhere. There is a focus on visual thinking. So this is my little sideline. I draw pictures or grab them somewhere. And stories can be told, songs and dances can be made even, and so on. So I'm hoping to learn from the Indigenous people in the next couple of days about ways to do this in a creative way that helps people to think outside of the box and make more sense of a very uncertain future. Then we talk about the synergies in stage 3 of this whole thing. And again, we saw one of these diagrams yesterday, the synergies of actors. And we look for ways in which some of the actors of the project on circular economy, but we can start to say, okay, and actually the circular economy stakeholders, this was the UN Industrial Development Organization in Ukraine, they really like the diagram because otherwise it's words, bullet points, you know, very boring. And what do we do really? And so on. So you give them a picture and say, oh yeah, so I can see my house there, you know, somewhere, or my business or something. And it starts to make sense for the transformation vision factor. Finally, and just to say, I think this workshop is not short of vision. There are fantastic visions for natural flood management and also for many of the techniques that we are seeing, you know, come forth. However, the vision for how the whole of Uttar Pradesh or something can be transformed, not only with natural flood management, but all of the other systems of democracy and enabling of livelihoods and land management and agriculture and so on and so on. These are big scale challenges and maybe big scale visions. So finally, in the 4th stage, we talk, again, here is one example from project. Basically, we say, okay, we take a longer term view, 3 horizons, so-called, Horizon 1 up to maybe 3 or 5 years, Horizon 2, maybe 10 years, Horizon 3, 25 years or so, way beyond the current election cycle or budget limits and so on. Why do we do this? Because we are looking for the long-term transformation. And as you can see, then you can start to get quite specific about, oh, this, we do this in the medium term with these people, and that will help to move towards this vision on the right-hand side, and so on. So that is what I'm hoping will come out of this project. Again, not just a set of abstracts, but more like a vision and a pathway or a roadmap so that policy can see, oh, yeah, we'll do this and this, business and infrastructure people can say, yeah, we do that and that. Civil society say, yeah, we will work on this and so on. So not to say it's all fixed, but quite the opposite, but at least there is a sense of direction. Okay, so then what does the AI say? Well, I ran a test, put the question of this project into Claude, and after quite a while, it takes more time to design a PowerPoint, and then you have to fiddle around and make it readable, but it's actually very good. And not to go into it now, so there is more detail if you want to in each of those. Critical success factors, and so on. Now, this is just to say the AI is really good. I'm actually scared will I have a job? I don't know. Will you have a job? Well, I hope so. Let's say the main task here is for the humans to stay ahead of the AI, to use AI to enable greater human intelligence, which is direly, urgently needed to solve the big problems of the day. Climate change, number one, but many other problems also. So, well, how we are constructing our CHAI process, again, CHAI is collected human artificial intelligence and that combination. Well, so we go back to our 4-stage diagram and say, okay, so now we can be more specific and ask questions and review at each of the 4 stages. During this week, we're not going to get much beyond stage 1 or 2, although stages 3 and maybe 4 are also in the frame somewhere, but we have to be realistic about what can be achieved. Thank you. 10 minutes. And then briefly, there is a bit more explanation if anyone wants to look at this. These slides are on the whiteboard, and you should have the links for the whiteboard, if you want to have a look. So I will not spend much more time now talking about how collective intelligence works, but it's a very interesting story. We also then are looking particularly at how the theory of collective intelligence applies to AI on that side at different levels, from the individual, put a query in, get an answer, to group working, and also to crowd intelligence. And then in the middle, we have an interface where the humans meet the AI. This is the structure of our collaboration with Beijing at the moment. And I'm hoping that Calcutta and West Bengal can be part of this. Okay, so quickly, I will move over to the whiteboard. It's making sense so far. Okay, so the slides over here. If anyone wants to have a look, again, speakers, send me your slides if you have any. We already have your abstracts. So I took the liberty to produce a little summary of the abstracts. This is on the whiteboard, also on the WhatsApp chat. Claude produced the summary. I managed to feed in some detailed instructions to Claude. This is very important stage. There's a big green space here for general observations and discussions. You're welcome to just drop a few comments right now before lunch. And then, well, just for example, here is the summary of the speaker abstracts organized by different thematic categories. So you can see, here's the government category. I'll not talk about this in any detail, but just to say, this is here. And here's the economic. Social categories, including starting with indigenous ecological knowledge. It even mentions, the Amitabh Ghosh literature. Interesting. I guess this was in your abstract, and so on. So this is one step, and this is not the whole answer, clearly. Here's the technical side. Here's the river management knowledge in the middle, rivers, floods, dams, etc., with a few examples. Now, again, this is simply taking from the abstracts. I did not myself read all the abstracts, but I would like to. But it's more to say, this is how we are processing what is in there. Why would we do this? Well, because at the end of the day, we're looking for connections which are significant and practical. Meaning, again, if we're serious about making real progress on this, we need not only a report, not only a set of academic papers which stay inside the academic community usually, but we need to really help government and business and civil and the indigenous and so on to really work together more than they do. Now, when we say work together, you have to be careful, because it's easy to be idealistic. we do live in a pretty big, bad world with structures of power, of wealth, inequality, exclusion, all kinds of stuff. As a representative of, UK, I take full responsibility for the evils of colonialism. I'm deeply sorry, but we are where we are now. And so, again, what we're trying to do here is to say, okay, there are ways of working which start to make sense of this. And by the way, if anyone wants cross-cutting insights, I'm sure some of these things will emerge over dinner, for example, or coffee, tea breaks. But here they are all written down so far as analysed by the AI. Now, what would be much better is could they be analysed by the humans? Could the humans check the AI and add where the AI has got it wrong or where it missed something? I'll just also say on the interactive document, which is here, it looks like this. You should have the link now. If not, it's on the even on the handout. Somewhere there's a bunch of handouts. I'll put them down here somewhere. Please help yourself to a handout. Yes. Well, there's not enough actually for the whole room. So if I just put a pile at the front and pass it around, it says more or less what I've got here, but the program inside there is a bit changed. So don't look at the program table on page 4. That has changed. You'll also see general flyers for my big book, last big book, and also the visual thinking practice. Now, basically, so there's space there for general questions. And in fact, if someone could just test that the system is working, that would be nice. Just, get on your phone or something, follow the link, and put in a question. It's also easy to delete somebody else's question or comment, so please be careful if you can, not to delete other stuff. Now, what's interesting here is, so I started a test run and say, okay, I will get together with my family members, which you see here, and ask some questions. Follow the key stages for the foresight method. So question 1, what are the 3 key challenges in the current situation? And okay, question 2, how do social, economic, technology, and so on and so on. And then I say, who are the main actors and stakeholders in this challenge? Okay, so I put in some actors in the black writing, and then I run it past Claude, and Claude said, oh, I think you need to complete this list. So Claude comes up with all these other actors, very intelligent, scared again. And then I ask a more edgy question, who are the main winners and losers? And Claude fills in some of my gaps. And losers, yes, and winners, yes. This is really important if we're trying to build the collective intelligence of natural flood management. First question, some people will win, maybe money or land or power, or livelihood, others will lose. That's, we try to make the winners as many as possible, the losers as few, but not always simple. And then to fill that out, I ask, what are the main social and economic interactions? And I start that list, and then again, the AI fills it out. And it's actually quite a good list. Here's one, for example, traditional panchayat systems versus modern bureaucratic structures create institutional friction. Yes, and many other problems, but it kind of gets to the point. So again, this is not to say that AI is going to solve all of our problems, but it certainly seems to be able to analyze where are the problems simply from what is coming up on online. Now, final point is indigenous people. Well, I was asking people yesterday, so do the indigenous people, do they have broadband and smartphones? In other words, could they come into the system in Bengali and, play their part and learn and, be included? And I think the answer is, well, maybe yes, but maybe not quite, because there's another thing, which is to say, this kind of language tends to talk in a sort of, technocratic way, which we take for granted as academics and so on, but people out there may think I'm talking a very different way. Maybe one of stories. In England, some places you don't get anywhere at all unless you talk about football or cricket, for example. If you talk about football or cricket, yes, the door will open. But until you do that, no, the door is shut, no communication. So what I'm interested in also is to say, how can this kind of technology be useful, or at least to bring in the tribal people into the discussion clearly and actively. I did one workshop in Mexico long before AI with illiterate slum dwellers in Mexico. And they said, oh, how do you do this? They're illiterate, they don't read any of this stuff. I said, okay, no problem. We'll draw pictures and talk. So the whole workshop was done in little pictures, cartoons, and that was really successful. So that's one example of how these things can work. So I will stop there. Thank you very much. I strongly invite comments in the first case on this document, and then we can come back maybe tomorrow evening to the whiteboard and say, okay, what do we have so far? What can we do next? Is this a good idea? Could it be improved? And basically, yeah, everybody here on the workshop is invited to join the collective natural management intelligence community. Right. Any questions? Yeah. Okay. Is it lunchtime? Well, one more minute. Well, so some people look a bit confused. And I noticed the organisers, I think, are not in the room. That's a shame. But no worries. Also, yeah, we have to fit this into the programme of the projects. I have to say, I only became aware of this programme about an hour ago from Upashak and his slides. So I'm catching up quite fast. So if I got anything wrong in terms of the projects, the programme, the timescale, etc. Having one final point. So we're not going to achieve everything in this in the next 3 days. So the proposal is that this then continues online for a couple of months. And we will then produce, we'll have meetings, I think twice a month is suggested on Zoom. As you can see, the main materials are all online. And I'm hoping that participants in the workshop will be interested to keep that discussion going and contribute comments and questions. And then we'll use the technology and the human interaction to reach something which would not happen otherwise. So that's kind of a test of what we're trying to do. And as you can see, the stakes are very high. I think it's a nice idea. There are many good examples, but they're so big, powerful pressures pushing the other way. So, yeah, this then raises the issue that, okay, can any kind of production of information influence, the force of capital, for example? And just to say one example from Chennai, the previous project, which I was saying now 5 years ago. But we got a friendly response from the Tamil Nadu, the Indian Real Estate Association, something like that. So somebody from that association came to our meeting in Chennai. So part of our workshop was to say, well, so far, real estate has a very powerful logic, short-term profit, basically. So it will, destroy any kind of water systems and ecosystems in its path, basically. The destruction is immense. And the politician, the policymakers are kind of just running to catch up, keep up. However, there is some realization, even in the real estate community, that there could be a better way to do this. There could be a logic to thinking more long term. There could even be a financial logic if we arrange the investment model in such a way that it reflects the natural capital, the social capital, and so on. So we started to adjust our peri-urban research, which is mainly academic and civil society, to the agenda of the Indian Real Estate Association, which is primarily financialized, profit focused, increasingly globalized in the big cities, and so on. And I would not say complete success, but at least an area of potential synergy and ongoing discussion. That is as good as we could maybe expect, for one smallish project, well, medium project, but now. Again, I would not expect states, the Real Estate Association and all the communities to change their ways and start thinking long term, and so on suddenly. However, if there are ways of working with what they do and adjusting the investment models and even the calculations for discount. So, yes. Any questions? Sorry?
No, sir. What does it mean by scenario mapping and how it will work?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, briefly, this picture showed one example. Just to find that again. There's a whole technique here that which we teach on our international course sometimes. But yeah, the future is uncertain. 10, 20 years from now, well, at the moment, even next week is quite uncertain, what is going on in Latin America. But we say, okay, thinking 5, 10, 20 years ahead, what are the big forces of change? What are the main types of alternative futures in which we may live in 20 years from now? And there are techniques of doing this in a very systematic way. We analyze the drivers of change from the system. We look at the different layers, from surface things to underneath things, and so on. Another time I can, do some training on that or talk about that with examples. But there's just one, cartoon example from a previous project. Well, as you can see, the theme here is food. So we had a food systems project, and the policymakers say, well, we would like to transform the food system of the UK, but this, is a big thing, not going to happen tomorrow, or even in 5 years. It's a long-term thing. And by the time we transform that food system, the world will be different. So how different could it be? Could it be like this or like that? In its simplest form, scenario thinking is like, tomorrow, is it going to rain or will the sun shine? And then you can start to plan. Should I take an umbrella or a sunshade or or both? And a further version of the question. So far in this project, I don't see any futures thinking as such. Maybe there's something in the abstracts which I missed. Again, if we are serious about taking these great ideas into the world and achieving some of them, then we have to look at the future because it's a long-term task. So this is kind of the basic way in which we start thinking about the future. And again, just to reiterate, the more that we can bring in creative thinking, talk about stories, novels, plays, films, dancing, music, and so on, then the better. In fact, the man who came to Manchester and presented the tribal culture, he played some of the songs. I was really moved. Yeah, fantastic. And then we can start to say, oh, this is not just like a technical here now, 2026. Let's talk about 20 years. Like a mythological approach, as per the previous speakers. Yeah, this is in the mythology level. Time is not simply counting the years. Time is a way of constructing a bigger kind of reality. So we can discuss all that over lunch, I think. Anything else? Anyway, so final call, please interact on the document. You should have the link. Even on the handout, there's the same link as there. And let's do that, and then we can look at people's ideas all on the same page. Yeah. Final word about democracy, which some people have mentioned here and there. It's very easy for people in positions of, knowledge, power, and so on. So, oh yeah, here's the answer. Here's my slides. Everybody must listen to my slides. And I feel this very intensely every time I give a PowerPoint, which I love doing. But, I'm aware that the room is maybe full of 50 people and only one person is talking. I would much prefer it if everybody could say something. And if you see the cartoon for the workshop, yes, we organise into small groups of 4 or 5 around the table. Everyone gets a chance to speak. Where is it gone? And that's one way to do it. However, the more people in the room and the less time, okay, so then we have to go online. So this is the other side of the going online comment and questions and discussion, which is to say, yeah, this is part of the democratic process. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, has expertise, experience, interest, ideas, etc. I would love to know what everybody is thinking and saying. We don't have enough time today, but so put your thoughts, ideas, questions online, and then it might make a long document. Okay, so then we can summarize it. But at least you're in there. I would really appreciate that. So again, please do that, and we can all move forward. So I think I'm done. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Ravets, for an engaging and intellectually stimulating training session. Your approach has encouraged collaborative thinking and offered us practical tools that greatly enhance the academic value of this program.
Now we move on to our next session. This session will be conducted by Professor Orup Kumar Bokshi, Department of Management and Business Administration, Alia University. Professor Orup Kumar Bokshi has more than 23 years of teaching experience, apart from industrial exposure of 4 years. Dr. Bakshi specializes in marketing, and his research interest includes cultural and heritage tourism, tourism branding, gender discourse in tourism, application of mixed method research, women entrepreneurship. It is our privilege to invite Dr. Bakshi to kindly grace the dais. Let us request our research scholars, Department of Geography, to kindly felicitate Professor Bakshi. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. The two sessions which are basically nightmare for any resource person, just before the lunch and just after the lunch. So I have been entrusted with both. So anyway, thanks to the organizing committee for inviting me in this particular workshop. And prior to this workshop, just before the Christmas in 2025, I had a day-long session with the Department of Geography in relation to this particular project on dealing with some of the core aspects of research, particularly which are field intensive in nature. So at that time, I had a discussion with Dr. Ajnarul and Dr. Nasreen, and they thought that this particular session could again be replicated in this particular workshop. So these two sessions, particularly this particular session, it would give you certain idea about the kind of interpretivistic research or social constructivism that is the, you can say, the DNA for qualitative research. And then in the post-lunch session, we would like to take up certain hands-on tools which help in data assimilation, data synthesis, and generate certain kind of results, particularly the visualizations and all those things. Now, talking about the qualitative research, I was out and out a quantitative researcher. Because I started with my academic career with masters in genetics, so I am essentially a biologist. Then I completed my MBA, and then I went on to complete MSW, the social work. So basically, I am a triangulated person in science, and then social science, then applied social science. So I understand the application of research in transdisciplinary domain, where the cross-cutting areas are coming, where science interacts with social science and where social science interacts with the applied social science. So during 2010, 2011, I spoke with a number of professors of mine because while conducting quantitative research, I had this feeling that it has been very semantic, very surface in nature, because what quantitative research do, they force, particularly when you are conducting research on ethnic communities, tribal groups, or any other kind of community, and if you are applying, statistical models, what they tend to do, they try to find out, some kind of a statistical significance at the level of mean, and they try to homogenize and standardize the entire result, which is not true in certain cases, particularly if it involves behavioral study, psychological study, eco-social behavior, psychosocial behaviors. Quantitative models are not very good. Okay, so it will only restrict you at the semantic level. It will never allow you to uncover the latent structures that are lying the data. First of all, it will never allow you to deal with the data which are really meaningful. They will only force you to collect certain kind of numerical outputs based on certain kind of survey questionnaire that you are preparing for yourself, and thereby restricting deeper understanding and deeper insights of the human behavior, human interactions, etc. So from 2011 onwards, I shifted to, from positivistic kind of research to more of a social constructivism and interpretivism, which gave me certain ideas that was never explored in Indian context to that extent. And gradually, when the pragmatism movement started, the mixed method research was initiated at the fag end of 1980s, started in 1989 and then continued. So nowadays, we do a lot of research using the mixed method approaches, okay? So this would be a very, preliminary discussion before we take on to the analytical part. So when basically qualitative research is to be applied, or when you are shifting from quantitative research to a qualitative research, primarily when you are trying to explore something which has never been done. Unfortunately, in a research ecosystem or in a research environment which is dominated by positivism, who believes that there is a universal system runs in the world, which is dominated by the universal laws. So there will be, universal systems, or there is a single reality out there to understand. People will try to follow all those universalisms. So there is no scope for dualism. There is no scope for plurality. So you only believe that, the theories, the equations, the formulas, and the universal set of laws will solve everything. So there are universal laws like the law of gravity, law of heat and mass transfer, law of thermodynamics, law of, integration, differentiation. And if you feel that the human behaviors could be explained with the help of all these laws, you believe in a dominant paradigm. So you believe in a single truth. You believe in an universal truth and a single reality, which actually does not exist. Say, for example, a researcher wants to evaluate the essence, criticalities, factors, consequences, rehabilitation issues of the victims of domestic violence. Now, domestic violence, if I go across the communities, it differs in nature, in intensity, in its own form, and the way people cope up. What kind of universal theory could be applied to standardize all these, experiences of the victims? It's very difficult. Okay, so in those cases, when your objective is to explore certain things which are situated, which are highly context bound, then interpretivism or social constructivism probably is the only route, not the positivistic kind of approach. Secondly, in case of quantitative research, we find something which is called a power structure or a power relationship between the researcher and the research participant. In most of the quantitative research, what we do, we go to the field with a kind of a structured questionnaire fitted with some kind of a scale. In most of the cases, those are interval scales. And we do not allow the research participant to be very elaborate, because in most of the scales, we are using discrete figures, discrete numbers, not the continuous number. So we are saying these are the set of statements, and to what extent you agree with it. And we are fitting it with a scale, say from 1 to 5 or 1 to 7. Most of you probably know the use of the interval scales or the Likert scale. And thereby we are forcing the research participant to select anything between 1 to 5 and 1 to 7. Now say I am a research participant, I want to express my opinion and say, okay, my answer lies between 3 and 4. So I want to give a figure 3.15, and you are not allowing me to do that. Now, if I change those statements against which I am actually generating response into an open-end question, not fitted with a scale, and then you see the magic. They will come out, say, multiple pages of reply. So as a researcher, I am coming back to my classroom or to my office or to my lab with a set of matrix data all filled up as per the scale. And another researcher is coming back from the field asking the same statements in a question form, open and question form, and he or she is carrying this much of document. Which do you think is more enriching? You will never get deeper insights from the matrix data. Okay. And under these circumstances, when you feel that the central or the anchoring phenomena or the issue that you are studying, it requires deeper exploration, you always go for qualitative research, because again, the quantitative understanding will never allow you to contextualize the deeper aspects of the centrally rooted phenomena or the core problem that is under study. Okay, so that's the issue. Philosophical assumptions, I'm not going details into it, but with respect to interpretivism, as far as the ontological posit is there, it always refers to the fact that you believe in multiple realities. Okay, so as an interpretivist or a social constructivist, I believe that beyond the known existence of reality, there could be multiple realities that govern and influence and control a social phenomenon. It could be child trafficking, it could be human trafficking, it could be sexual abuse, sexual harassment in the workplace, any issue related to our day-to-day social life, or even related to our environmental issues. Okay, say for example, someone is researching or someone is doing certain work on crime. Okay, and crime has number of multiple embeddings. So crime has a social embedding, it has a cultural embedding, it has an economic embedding. So data comes from these, stems from these bases. So you cannot have a single kind of reality, and then you cannot treat crime as a monolith, which is applicable across all these foundations. Okay. So when you are writing, in most of the cases where the researcher fails to connect with the central anchoring issue, because their philosophical assumptions are not aligned with the kind of lens that you prefer through which you are seeing your outer world. So ontology becomes very important. You believe in multiple realities. You believe that there are dualisms or plurality that exist with regard to the central anchoring problem. Then comes the epistemology. Epistemology deals with the kind of knowledge that you want to acquire out of those realities. Okay. Now, what kind of knowledge can you claim? But more importantly, how to validate that knowledge? In case of quantitative research, you will find that most of the reviewers or examiners, as an examiner, I also initially used to have that habit that once a PhD scholar gave a presentation of the data analysis, there is almost a reflexive question being asked: how do you validate this data analysis or the output? Okay, so it comes from a very positivistic mind that everything could be statistically validated. Okay. Now, in case of qualitative research, the statistical validation is never applied because we are dealing with, subjective data which are very abstract in nature. You deal with text, you deal with images, you deal with videos, you deal with audios. So those are unstructured data. So statistical applications on those unstructured data is not possible. So there are other ways to validate the knowledge or the epistemic knowledge that are coming out through your research. So that's very important. The approach is so very different. The third one is axiology. Axiology, basically what values you are bringing to your research. Okay, the ethics, etc. Because particularly when you are actually doing or conducting a research where human interaction is very intensive, then probably the ethical guidelines or the value judgment of the researcher plays a very prime role. And then the last one is methodology. 90% of the researcher feels that's the most important thing. So every emphasis is given over there. But these are the four pillars. You cannot, delete or discard one particular pillar and ground your research on 3 or 2 pillars. Or there are many researchers which are primarily grounded on the 4th pillar itself. Each and every one is very important, because that, that creates the kind of lens through which you are seeing the problem. See, probably there are 20, 30 people over here. We all are seeing the same incident that is taking place in our social environment. We could use different lenses. We can have different perception about the same incident. So there is not a hard and fast, obligation that we could generate the same concept or perception. Even we see, say for example, I gave you that particular example of domestic violence. We see an incident of domestic violence and we could come out with different perception that why it is taking place, what are the consequences, etc. Because our belief system, thought system, and the lens through which we are seeing this particular incident may differ. So it becomes very pertinent that your ontological perspective, the epistemological perspective, the axiological guidelines, and then the methodology, which will be informed by these 3 preliminary pillars, has to be understood. It's not that all focus to be given on methodology and the data analysis. So that's a forced fit. Okay, that should be avoided. And then there are interpretive frameworks. In textbook, if you go through good textbook on qualitative research, you will find that interpretive frameworks are basically considered to be, there is a technical term which is called paradigms. Okay, or sometimes it is also, another term is used which is called the worldviews. So what are paradigms and worldviews? The paradigms and worldviews are those lenses through which you are viewing your world. Okay. And you can use different lenses to view the same incident, the same phenomena. And it would have a different kind of connotation. It would have a different kind of meaning if you are using multiple lenses. Okay. So now, normally we have other paradigms or belief system also, but these 4 paradigms are very closely related to the qualitative research. One is the post-positivism. Post-positivism is an effort to move away from the core positivistic views. Now, the core positivistic views are always data-driven in nature. Data means quantitative data-driven. Okay, so they always believe that 2 + 2 always makes 4. Yes, it will always make 4 across the spatio-temporal zone, but it is guided by certain universal norms, mathematical rules. You cannot change it. But human behavior, it is not about 2 + 2 = 4 across the spatio-temporal zone, isn't it? You are working on the same community in West Bengal, working on the same community in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, will not allow you to interpret the community behavior in the same way. There is no homogenization or standardization. Okay, so that's very important. Post-positivism brought for the first time that, okay, when it comes to study of human behavior, particularly the psychological aspects of the human, the psychological nature of human, the core positivistic approaches may not be applied. But there is a limitation of post-positivism, and that is post-positivists also sought to validate their output through a positivistic view. So though they also, depended to a certain extent on the data-driven approach. So what they did, they dealt with the subjective data, but they converted the subjective data into a numerical codes. And those codes were taken up for statistical validation. So although post-positivists said that we have moved away and we have created room to understand human behavior and the nuances of the human behavior, the way human beings interact, it cannot be, trapped or captured with the help of certain mathematical formulas or numerical models or simulations. But still, when it came to data validation, they strictly, stayed aligned with the traditional data validation technique. So that was one of the limitations of post-positivism. As a result of which, we found a number of researchers during the 1950s where this social constructivism or interpretivism, which is an out-and-out qualitative take, which didn't depend on any kind of positivistic or a data-driven approach. Yes, data was there, but data was very subjective in nature. Okay, so interpretivists, they basically dependent on the observations. Okay, what we observe. So when we are observing human behavior, we tend to document them. And there are several ways of documenting the human behavior. You can note down, or you can take, while you are interacting with a particular community or a research participant, you can go for a videography or audiography, whatever it is, and you are actually documenting and then going through those data, you are actually applying your own intellect to uncover not only the surface meaning, but also the deeper meanings or unmanifested, meanings that are lying deep inside the particular data. So when it comes to data analysis of subjective data or qualitative data that we deal with, there are two layers. A group of researcher may prefer, okay, I will, make myself available at the surface layer only. That's the semantic layer. So you can understand what is explicitly stated. Okay, so if you read a newspaper article, or if you read an interview which is published in the newspaper, anybody can understand what that interview is all about, because there are certain surface layer meaning. But as a researcher, you are not satisfied with that surface layer meaning. You want to understand what are the deep-rooted contextualization of that particular meaning. So you want to uncover the latent structure, which are implicit, unmanifested. That's why, a good researcher, particularly who are doing research on this paradigm, interpretivism and social constructivism, they are supposed to uncover all those latent meaning and create a periphery or a kind of a bubble whereby they can actually link those undiscovered or unstated meaning with the contextual knowledge. Now, can you link it? Okay, so that is one of the challenges for the interpretivists or the social constructivists, and that takes time. Data analysis, when it comes to quantitative data, it doesn't depend on quantity, how much time it will take. Does it depend on quantity? No. You can give me a data matrix of 10,000, say, data set. How much time it will take? Maximum 1 hour if I know what to do. If I know what are the variables, if I know how the variables are assumed to be related, I can run any kind of statistical model with the, click. If I want to run a regression model, one click. If I want to run a factor analysis, one click, and it is done. So it doesn't depend on the quantum of data. As long I am very well aware about how the variables have been identified and how the variables are hypothesized to be related. What about the qualitative data? Now, frankly speaking, I can give you an example. This is not a standardized example, but this is some kind of a guess some kind of understanding you will be having. Say, if I collect interview from 15 people, 15 research participants, say there are 10 set of open-end question or a schedule, with the help of which I have gone to the field and collected the interviews. And more or less there are, say, each and every question has been replied. On an average, there are 250 words. 15 interviewees, that's a very small data set. If you are conducting a very serious analysis, it will take at least 1 to 2 months. Qualitative data analysis takes time and engagement with the data. It's not that you feed the data on a statistical software or numerical software and then click certain buttons and every outputs will be there. Most of the outputs, you do not know why they have come out. You cannot interpret without understanding the data structure. Forceful statistical applications are done. So then it becomes very, it doesn't carry any meaning. So when it comes to qualitative data analysis, you have to be very patient, okay, because it takes a lot of time. Okay. Transformative, emancipatory, this is one particular paradigm that we use to understand the power structure that, that are existing in our society, because we feel that knowledge is created from the continuous shifting of the power structure. Okay, so the dynamism of the power structure creates that knowledge. The knowledge is institutionalized and then it is transmitted. Okay. Say, for example, the critical race theory or the theory of feminism. Okay, they are all, fruits of this transformatory, emancipatory kind of a research or kind of a paradigm through which the researcher is viewing the power structure of the society. Say, for example, in the theory of feminism, the capitalistic feminism, where capitalism itself is considered to be a masculine power, and how this masculine power controlled the marginalized voices, suppressed the marginalized voices, and they didn't allow them to be the mainstream part of decision making when it comes to capital decision making related to finance or any other kind of trade related decisions. Okay, so this particular paradigm, which a lot of people or a lot of researchers use, this particular paradigm is used when you are actually focusing on the nature of power and additionally the shifting nature of the culture, acculturation and the enculturation process, how the culture gets adopted and absorbed by a particular community, etc. Then we have the postmodernism. When modernism came, it was a very close ally to positivism. Okay, it again believed, okay, so there are universal set of laws, universal set of rules which will actually govern. Postmodernism, again, it shifted towards human behavior. It was behavior centric. So it has the essence of constructivism and interpretivism. So you need to fix up your lens. Through which lens am I seeing this particular problem? But as I have told you, that two researchers or multiple researchers may see or may work with the same problem, but they can use different lenses. Clear? So if you are using different lenses to see the same problem, your approach, your understanding of that particular problem or issue or a core phenomena would be different. Okay. So I'm not going into the details of this. You can find these things in any good textbook. Now, in qualitative research, is any kind of research is not a static kind of a thing. It's very dynamic. So it is having its own evolution. Okay. So qualitative research has evolved and it is still evolving. From 2005 onwards till date, the kind of development in the domain of qualitative research that has taken place is unprecedented. Quantitative research has stagnated because it cannot go beyond the mathematical applications or statistical applications, which are very standardized set of rules and regulations. But qualitative research over the last 20 years, if you see the development, if you see the application, it will just blow your mind off. If you try to find out what happened in the first decade of the 21st century, in Indian perspective, what amount of qualitative or constructivistic kind of research has been taken up, and if you compare it with the global counterpart, you will find that Indian counterpart has been left way behind. Okay, the bulk part of the qualitative research has been conducted outside India, as a result of which when we try to refer certain very interesting work, or if we try to access certain textbook, 95 to 99% of the textbooks are coming from the foreign authors. So it was really, surprising for researchers that why qualitative research was not given that kind of a priority, having understood the fact that it has the power to uncover the nuances of the problem in a much broader way, in a much deeper way. Okay, so in the course of evolution between 1971 and 1976, this is a very interesting phenomena which we all observed. We normally refer to as a blurred genre. Now, why it got blurred during this particular period? Because in the process of conducting research, a number of social scientists tried to borrow methods, methodology, data analysis protocol from the streams of humanities. And the demarcating line between the discipline of social science and humanities got blurred. Okay, so probably you have heard about narrative analysis. Narrative analysis is now one of the critical analytical techniques that we use in social science. Narrative analysis was an out-and-out prerogative of the literature-based discipline. Okay, so from that particular perspective, we came to the crisis of legitimization, crisis of representation in the early 21st century. And the fifth moment that we are seeing now is qualitative research integrated with the technological advancement. Okay, Professor Ravitz has talked about this integration of AI. And a lot of scholars used to ask this question, that to what extent AI should be used in particularly data analysis. Okay, I shared this experience with the students of geography, but I want to share once more. See, basically when we say that whether AI can actually replicate how the human being is thinking, or how cognitively you can think and uncover the meaning, I have certain doubts and reservations. Why? Because AI is strictly dependent on what? AI is dependent on the data that you are feeding. Okay, so it can uncover the characters or uncover the pattern from the data itself. Okay, the question is, can it contextualize? You see, before the advent of the generative AI, after the introduction of the transformers, which are basically nothing but neural networks, before the advent of the GPTs, the AI used to heavily rely on what? The training models. You are training the AI with the help of certain kind of a data. Who is creating those data? Human beings. So human generated data applied on the AI models, and then previously, before advent of this GPT-4 or OpenAI, who introduced GPT-4, when they used to, if I do not know whether you have done that during that time, if you used to give certain prompt or question, and if your question or prompt lies outside that data boundary, there could be two possible results. One, AI submits that I can't answer your question, or they go for fabrication. Sometimes it is called in a textbook, or if you surf the literature regarding AI, you will find a very popular term called data hallucination, or hallucination by the artificial intelligence basically makes sense of the data and comes out with the best probable output. So it identifies the pattern. It never thinks like a human mind. So it's not a cognitive agent. Okay. Now, after the introduction of the GPTs or the generative AI, what additional thing has been, what changes have been made? Now AI can access data. Which kind of data? Now, beyond the data with the help of which the model has been trained. So which kind of data? The data which are openly available on the public domain. Okay, openly accessible data which are not kept behind any kind of paywall. So you do not have to breach or break the paywall to access that data. So data which are not encrypted, open access data. Now the problem with open access data is they suffer from certain kind of bias representation, misrepresentation, and inconsistency. So we hear this term called algorithmic bias. Algorithmic bias basically comes from those data which the AI tends to publicly access. Okay, so it's an excellent tool, but again, it cannot override the kind of thinking or thought process that a human brings to the framework. Okay, so as a supportive tool, yes, it's wonderful. Now, there are certain theoretical approaches to qualitative research. Again, a good textbook will help you to understand. There are three primary, theories which help in understanding interpretivism. One is symbolic interactionism, second one is theory of sense making, and the third one is the structuration theory. So you can use any textbook to understand, because primarily qualitative research is grounded on these three. Yeah, these are some of the challenges of the conducting a qualitative data. As I have said I have just shared with you this information that when it comes to data analysis, a lot of time is required, a lot of engagement is required, other than that of a quantitative data analysis. And one of the critical differences between qualitative and quantitative research is the qualitative data analysis starts the moment from which you started to collect data. You cannot expect to bring back the data to your lab or to your classroom after the entire data has been collected, and then you start analyzing. No, because when I am interacting with a person, when I am interacting with a community member, when I am interacting with a research participant, a number of thoughts may come to my mind. So you need to jot those down. Several research questions were modified when the first interview was conducted. Normally, in case of quantitative research, there is hardly any scope to restructure your objectives and draft your research question. They are almost like a semi-permanent kind of thing. But qualitative research, unlike quantitative research, is not a linear feed-forward kind of process that you go from step 1 to step 2, then to step 3, then to step 4, without having a chance to go back from step 4 to step 3. In qualitative research, it's an iteration. It's a cyclical process, moving back and forth. So you have the opportunity to refine your objectives, redefine your research question. So the analytical process starts right from that particular point when you have started interacting with the research participants. So all the analytical memos, we call them reflexive memos, it starts during the time of data collection. Okay. So this is one of the features of qualitative research: simultaneity. Simultaneity means data collection and the analytical process, it takes place parallelly. Okay, so there is no time lapse between collection of the data and analysis. So these are the big fives that we consider as the inquiry process when it comes to qualitative research: the narrative inquiry, the phenomenological research, the grounded theory, the ethnography, and the case study. Okay, sometimes they are used in combination. Say, for example, you can use ethnography and case study together. You can use grounded theory and case study together. You can use phenomenology and ethnography together. So you have Harold Garfinkel's model of ethnomethodology also. Even when you are using ethnography, there are so many versions. Autoethnography is there, duoethnography is there, remote ethnography is there, visual ethnography is there, digital ethnography is there. So you need to understand what kind of approach or the inquiry system I'm going to adopt. Okay. Now, if you ask me which one is the most rigorous interpretivistic kind of an approach or constructivistic kind of an approach, it's the grounded theory. Okay, grounded theory, which was developed by Glaser and Strauss way back in 1967, and it had gone through a number of revisions. We got a fight between Glaser and Strauss. Glaser didn't agree with the Strauss's approach of very prescriptive kind of norm for developing a generating theory. And we now accept something which is called a constructivistic grounded theory, which has been developed by Charman in 2005, over a period of 9 years, 2014. So grounded theory probably is the best possible inquiry approach which captures all the nuances of the essences of interpretivism. Okay, grounded theory in itself is not a theory. Grounded theory is a process with the help of which you uncover or discover which are grounded in the data. Okay, so this is the purest form of an inquiry research. Purest form. Even phenomenology and ethnography. Ethnography, probably you know, that's basically when you are studying cultures, the human culture relationship or intercultural collaboration or comparative cultural study, etc. Ethnography comes to play, because in an ethnography, you have to be a part of the life of the research participants. Okay, so you have to live that particular life to understand the cultural nuances. Even in ethnography and phenomenological research, we have a certain underpinnings of a structured form of research. Grounded theory is very flexible in that particular sense. And in grounded theory, there is a system which starts with open coding, then coding, then selective coding, and then we develop something which is called the access paradigm model, based on which we identify the theory. If we cannot proceed to the theory, we can identify the set of thematic extractions, or we can understand and represent the nature of the variables and their possible relationship, and represent them with the help of certain working hypotheses, which could be further validated with the help of a quantitative research. So grounded theory is one particular, and very interestingly, grounded theory has gone through deeper level of evolution compared to the others. Although we know in case of phenomenology, we have three different types. We have existential phenomenology, we have transcendental phenomenology, we have hermeneutic phenomena. So there are application-wise, approach-wise, there are differences. But probably the grounded theory has gone through more revolutionary changes, and it has overwritten the concept of analytic induction. So the concept of thick descriptions, theoretical saturation, theoretical sampling, etc. They came from basically the concept of grounded theory. So that in itself is very interesting. Okay. So yeah, this you can find in any good textbook. You can refer to this. Yeah, so before we move on to that data analysis part in the second half, so what actually happens in qualitative data analysis is, if I represent with the help of a spiral, you can see on the left-hand side, all the procedures are mentioned. On the right-hand side, there are certain examples. We call it a data spiral. Very precisely, this is the data analysis spiral. So it starts with managing the data, because data management is one of the critical issues when it comes to handling qualitative data. Because a lot of scholars used to say that when we prepare transcripts which are collected in local dialects, what to do? Should we go for verbatim transcription? Are there any software with the help of which we can actually, transcribe anything that is collected in, say, Bengali language? Can I transcribe it? And if I can transcribe with the help of a software, to what extent I can rely on that transcript, so whether the actual essence has been captured. So there is a tool which is an open source or free access tool which is called TurboScribe. Okay, there is another tool which is used in the Google Colab that also help you in transcription, but TurboScribe is quite good. But again, whenever you are using a tool for transcription in local dialects, particularly I'm referring to Hindi or Bengali, if you are collecting the interviews in those two languages and you want to convert them and translate or transcribe them into English, TurboScribe is a better option. But again, after transcribing, go through those things very minutely. Because, these kind of softwares, what they do, they have a kind of a lexicon fitted into their system, in their algorithm. So every time they go for the dictionary meaning of the word. Sometimes, we speak word which takes us beyond the dictionary meaning. Okay, so in what context those words were used, those phrases were used, that you need to understand. Okay, so data management, sometimes we need to filter the data also, clear the data. If we are doing a research with the help of data which are collected from the social media, there are lots of impurities. You cannot use a particular platform for that kind of a data. But sometimes we call, big data are problematic. Why? Because they are a combination of structured and unstructured data. So filtration is required, a lot of filtration, data cleaning is required. So that also follows a particular procedure. Then reading and memoing, that's very important. Describing, classifying and interpreting and representing and visualization. You see, a lot of people ask about the application of softwares in qualitative data analysis. I never recommend. Okay, Because software are excellent data management tools. They will never analyze data for you. They can manage your data, okay? In Vivo Max QDA, Elastia, QDA Miner, whatever you say, all the open access tools that we have, the cloud-based tools like Ligre or Tagwit or Catma, these are excellent data management tools. They can manage your data, but when they are, if you are allowing, they have their AI console. If you are allowing AI to code, it's very difficult. They would not understand your level of thinking. What kind of thought process you have drafted those questions, the interview schedule, what did you expect to capture, and what actually you captured. It's very difficult, isn't it? Yeah, you can use AI to cross-check. Did you miss out something? Certain perspective, okay? But essentially, AI is inbuilt in all these platforms, okay? So you can use the so-called data analysis or data management tools like NVivo for one particular purpose that the human intellect or the human ability or the human skill fail to, reproduce in a nice way. Those are visualizations, okay? The networks, the mapping, every kind of visualization that is possible, okay? So that's very interesting, okay? So that is possible with the help of this data analysis software. So yeah, there is no replacement of a manual process that goes to the initial level of data analysis. You have to read between the lines to understand what does this data say or speak with you at the semantic level and at the deeper level. And you have to use your own understanding and coding. Okay, it's very difficult. If you allow the machine to read this data and then come out with some kind of a coding scheme, the machine will never understand the context. They never understand with what intent you have asked this particular question. Okay, so as I have told you, this is one particular excerpt that we of our research that we did, and it took months. Okay, and in qualitative research, I would like to end in this way. Sometimes, I talked about that data validation. Okay, how do you know these codes are final? How do you know these codes could be freezed? How do you know that these codes are something beyond which you do not see? See, in case of coding, there is an option for intercoder reliability. Or intercoder reliability is only possible if you have a collaborator. Most of the early career researchers who are doing PhD, they do not have that kind of a collaborator, and they cannot entrust someone to go through the data in that depth and come out with coding. Okay, so what to do? So I apply a trick. Say, for example, you code the data, the initial coding is done, and you lock up that entire data set somewhere. Don't look at that particular data set for at least 1 or a couple of months. Then you take a fresh printout of the data set again and then start coding again. Bring out that particular data set which you have coded earlier and then try to match up. You will find over a period of 2 months, you will forget everything, how you have coded the first set of data. So you are actually working as your own collaborator. So at a time T1 you have coded, at a time T2 you have coded, now match up. Whether there are certain differences, yes, your perspective may change. When you are reading the data for the second time, your thought process may have changed. Or you could have, uncover certain deeper understanding about the particular data. So that becomes very interesting, okay? Yeah. Recently, if you access this particular link, which is live on the UNESCO website, when we are conducting qualitative research, nowadays we are asking our scholars that instead of going and asking questions, if you feel that's the only way of interacting with the research participants, why don't you allow them to tell their own stories? Instead of throwing questions again, it is actually limiting the research participants into some kind of a periphery. Just allow them to be very impromptu and allow them to be very spontaneous. You place the topic, say it is, a climatic issue, or say certain biodiversity issues, or certain political issues, or anything, social issues. You place the central problem that you are actually trying to uncover and allow them to narrate about they might be having their own stories. Okay, so this is why this kind of research has emerged very, very strongly, where the storytelling or the stories that you are generating are being taken as a very useful source of data. Okay, and very interestingly, what Professor Ravitz has also shown somewhere, the storyboarding approach in analysis of the data, particularly if you surf the internet right now, if you use this terminology, that case analysis with the help of storyboarding, you will find a good number of papers which are actually using freehand drawing by the researchers, making sense of the data that they have collected, and they're visually representing the data in the form of hand-drawn animation. And then they are actually going for the bigger picture, understanding the data with the help of that kind of animated representation in terms of analysis. So you can go through this UNESCO site to have an understanding about this particular exercise that they took on the stories which protected an island from the climatic diversities. Okay, so we can take up this in the post-lunch session, the approaches towards the qualitative data analysis. Normally we find content and thematic analysis. These two are predominant in nature, and then we will take up certain open source, because if I prefer to use the open source platforms, because if I use something which is very encrypted, and if I provide a demo, the next day you don't have access, it doesn't make sense. Okay, and unethically, probably it would be unethical on my part also, because I am tempting you to go for something which is pirated or, not very ethical form of installation. So I would be using an open source tool, which is also having an AI console embedded in it. Okay, so we can take this thing up in the coming session. Okay, thank you. Any kind of questions that may have come to your mind, we can discuss it in that particular session only. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for this comprehensive and insightful session. We are immensely grateful and we are looking forward to your session.
With this, we conclude the first set of academic sessions for the day. We now break for lunch. Our resource persons are requested to kindly proceed to the dining hall on the ground floor itself. Our participants are requested to proceed to room 101 on the first floor of this building. The program will resume after lunch with a hands-on training session with Dr. Bokshi. After lunch, participants are requested to kindly proceed to the RS GIS Lab, Department of Geography, second floor, Park Circus campus, where the session will take place. Thank you.